Hello and welcome back to Conversational, the podcast. My name is Louis. I'm very, very excited to introduce our guest today. He is a British playwright, presenter, and mathematician, and the writer behind some of my favorite children's books. Please welcome Kjartan Poskitt.
Nice introduction. I think you can do a lot more of that for me. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I've got lots more for you, lots of statistics and facts to tell
It's
the
very
audience.
nice to be. It's nice you did take an interest anyway.
If you as a character are as interesting as your job list and list of interesting facts, then we're in for a real treat. So, with that in mind, if I were to ask you sort of to describe who you are, where you're from, and what you do in 60 seconds or less, how would you do that?
60 seconds. Where I'm from is very simple. Where I'm sitting here now is about half a mile from where I was born, York. I went to uni in Durham. I lived in London for about 10 years, lived in Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire for about 8 years. But eventually, I've got four of us siblings. We all sort of went like that. One of them went round the globe, and we're all back. There's a sort of strange magnetism that's pulled us all back to York, where sadly lost our parents now, but they live just up the road. But yeah, so York. So that's 60 seconds of where I'm from. And then I write books, I play pub pianos, did a lot of studio warm ups, and I run a pub quiz every week. There you are. There's your 60 seconds.
Brilliant. That's exactly what I needed. I might ask you for some pub quiz questions later, but we'll come back to that. One thing that I was explaining to you beforehand as well is that this podcast is obviously kind of inspired by growing communication skills in young people, and it comes from a public speaking background. So one question that we like to ask to kind of break the ice a little bit before we get into the details of your life, which I think kind of helps to explain a little bit about how you answer questions as a person. It's a very simple one. Alive, dead, fictional, or real, who are your five dream dinner guests?
Oh, blimey, drop that in. Why don't you? The first one will be somebody that I don't think anybody watching this will have heard of, but it was an actor called Frank Marlborough. When I was a little lad, we used to get taken to the York Theatre, and there used to be a fellow called Sam Cree used to write farces, and Frank Marlborough was the star turn. And he was the funniest man. And when I was a little lad, all I ever wanted to be was Frank Marlborough. And I was very fortunate when I got to be 16, I was offered a part in a play, professional actors, but I was like the sort of token school kid, and Frank Marlborough was in it. Lovely, lovely guy. He was just so funny. Unfortunately, only ever seen in rep theatre, never seen on the telly or a film. But I know Frank, head of the table. After that, we just wonder, really. It was lovely, guys, with Frank Marlborough.
So you got
Uh,
to meet and work with one of your five dream dinner
yes,
guests. Wow.
absolutely. Oh, I've been terribly fortunate in who I've met. Gosh, it'd be a packed dinner table. People sort of say, who's the nicest guy you ever actually worked with? And it's Frank, but you will have heard of. I would have to say Roy Castle, who was an extraordinary bloke, was Roy Castle. Phenomenally talented. He worked with everybody, and yet absolutely modest. There's nothing off him, no showbiz about him whatsoever. Incredible bloke, Roy Castle. So I've
Uh,
got five guests, have I?
you do. So
Frank,
you've done
Roy
two. I
Castle.
do have to admit, though, I haven't heard of Roy Castle. Who's Roy Castle?
What age are you?
I'm 23. Should I have heard of Roy Castle?
Lordy, I'd go back and start again. So I'm 23. Yeah. Yeah, I think anybody over the age of 23 will know of Roy Castle. For years on children's TV, he hosted a program called Record Breakers. He himself was a prolific multi-instrumentalist. He used to do all the clubs and stuff, but I think he held so many world records himself, including playing something like 73 different musical instruments in 4 minutes. Also, he was the fastest tap dancer for a short time in the world. That's been superseded. But he was just a showbiz legend, Roy Castle. So I'm being rude about your age. I'm also being jealous about your age. Let's just get that one in there, Louis. But
That's all right.
lovely,
That's some
lovely guy.
research for
Yeah,
me to do tonight, isn't it? Roy Castle.
yeah, there is, and films and all-star musical. He was in a couple of the Carry On films going back, but he could turn
Okay.
his hand to anything. Worked with Morecambe and Wise, worked with everybody. Like I said, Frank Marlborough, Roy Castle. I would have to put Houdini. I wrote a book about Houdini. I don't know how pleasant a man he was, but in terms of driven and what he did and what he achieved, Houdini, he billed himself as the world's greatest showman. Again, another show business person, but he was a real one of a kind as
Hmm.
Houdini. And don't start me on him because you're going to get 2 hours straight about Houdini. But, basically, if you don't know Houdini, the guy that used to escape from stuff, but he did so much other stuff. 1, 2, 3. I'm being very, very bad here. I haven't picked a female, and there must be hundreds of them. Elizabeth I would probably come straight to the top of the list, I think.
Elizabeth I.
I mean, again, she's probably very unpleasant, but you think of her father being Henry VIII and the way she inherited the country that was divided between Catholics and that. And then what a powerful woman doing it all on her own. I think she must have been extraordinary. And if we're going to go back into history, I'd have to go back to Isaac Newton as well. Isaac Newton will be my fifth. It'll be a very strange dinner party. Nobody would get on at all, I don't think, apart from Frank Marlborough. He'd get on with everybody.
So you got a couple of entertainers, a couple of historical figures. You've got an escapologist. You got everything you need there, including yourself.
It's the sort of question I'd like to have had yesterday and given you 5 more diverse answers. But just today, right now, at this moment, that's who's sitting around the table.
I sort of like catching people off guard with that question, though.
It's a good question.
I think it leads to some more interesting answers. So just to reiterate, you've gone for Frank Marlborough, Roy Castle, Houdini, Elizabeth I, and Isaac Newton. Happy with
that? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, during the course of this interview, I will suddenly blurt out another name because that's what happens. I'll talk about one thing, and the rest of my brain will suddenly be working on that. So this could be strange. Good luck.
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll make you a deal. I'll ask you again at the end of the podcast, and if you want to switch anybody out, we'll do that for you. We'll make it happen. We'll make this.
I would like to look any of those people in the face and say, "You're not coming to dinner now. There's somebody better." That'd be really.
I'll leave that job to you. They can turn up at your house, and you can turn them away. Okay, so we've got our 5. Let's bring it all the way back. We're going to try and go through in chronological order. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. What was your childhood like, and what were you like at a young age? What did you want to
do? Show off, basically. I love being on the stages from day one. And again, this is me looking at Frank Marlborough's little lad getting all these laughs. I thought, what a wonderful way to make a living. And I did school concerts. I learned to play the piano and instruments and things like that. But when I went through university, I went to Durham. I got an engineering degree, and I'm a qualified engineer. Never used it, but most of the time was spent doing shows. During which time I've got a lot of nice things to do. But shortly afterwards, when it was a matter of do I go professional, I found out very, very abruptly don't want to use a bad word. I'm not a very good actor. Right. I thought I'd be a great actor. I got all these great parts at uni. When you're actually up against talent, that's not me. And then what happened was went down to London, and I did have a TV job, and it fell through. And I'd just taken out a small mortgage. And a friend said, listen, you play piano. Why don't you go and play pianos in pubs and make some money? And I thought, this sounds like a weird thing to do because I learned very quickly, play loudly, and it has to be stuff they can sing along to. And providing they're singing, they can't hear you playing. So it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. And it was extraordinary, actually. After about 5 or 6 years playing pianos in pubs, I paid off my mortgage.
Wow.
So
what was the TV job that fell through?
Little TV series. I'd done other things, but this one was called Behind the Bike Sheds. It was a drama done by Yorkshire Telly, and I was just played the part of a school caretaker. And there were 2 adults in it, and then there was a whole host of young actors playing the school kids. And it's a cracking job. We did 2 series, and I was hoping just for a bit more. I thought, great, actually, for the first time in my life, I have a regular income, and so I took out a mortgage, and then the whole production folded. And the other actor in it, Gal McChrystal, he is the guy that directs and produces the big pantomimes with Sir Ian McKellen in them. I lost contact with Carl for 50 years, and suddenly his name came up on the bill, and I got in touch with him again. And he's done so well. He's probably one of the best live action comedy directors in the world, that bloke. So that's who I rub shoulders with.
Well, you're no stranger to directing pantomimes yourself, though, are you? You've done quite a bit of writing and directing pantomimes, as far as I understand.
I've always written shows. When I was at uni, I used to write a panto and sketches and stuff. Then when I left, when we first went to Edinburgh with the company, we were doing all different things, review stuff. But we used to do a pantomime in the summer. And so it was a bit unusual, but on the Fringe, we were doing Jack and the Beanstalk or Aladdin, and nobody else was doing them at the time. This is in the Fringe. Now there's 3,000 things on the Fringe. Then there were 500. And I really got the bug. And then I had a friend who took over a small theatre in London, and I used to write a panto for him once a year. And it was just really fun. And from there, I started to think of shows that could be published. So rather than just pantos, which there's hundreds of them, I came up with well, Henry the Tudor Dude is the one that's been done the most, which is a kind of comedy, but it's a musical based on Henry VIII. And that one still gets performed all over the world. I get emails from Canada or what's the place? Kenya. It was Kenya. Somebody sent me photographs of a wonderful cast in Kenya doing my Henry the Tudor Dude, all with the full Victorian costumes on in probably 50 degrees heat or something. And it was just brilliant.
That's incredible.
Am I giving long answers? Let me know if I'm going on a bit.
No, this is great. I mean, that's so interesting, though. Did you think that your work would translate to places like Canada or Kenya? Because
no,
you know,
no, and an even bigger shock. Now, wait a minute. Can I find one down here? Heck, I can't just lay my hands on a copy. Ages ago, I did a book really to entertain one of my little girls, and it was called Agatha Parrot, and it was set in their primary school, and some of their characters in the Agatha Parrot series were adapted from people in the primary school, and all the little kids around there used to read them. There was an American edition of Agatha Parrot. It was extraordinary, different pictures, wonderful, wonderful pictures. But the fact was, the bloke who actually did the artwork, I had a lot of contact with. He lives in Arizona, Wes. He lives like in the desert with cactuses and rattlesnakes, and that's where he is. And the fact that I'm taking this funny little piece of cold, rainy York and they're laughing at it in Arizona absolutely takes my head away. It's brilliant.
It's incredible, isn't it? You really don't think that British humor is very translatable, I suppose, if that's a word, but clearly it is.
It is fun. I mean, obviously in America, the American adaptations they do change some of the words, but generally it's English as you or I would recognise it. But the first Murderous Maths book I wrote back in 1997, I think it was. I mean, I just wrote it just to do a few jokes and get a few numbers in. And I was just amazed within about a year, it was in about 20 languages. And I thought, God, writing books is easy. I should do more of this. I hadn't realised that the worst thing that can happen to a gambler is that you win big on your first bet because then you keep betting more and more. But that first Murderous Maths book is still selling an awful lot in China. It's the Chinese and Far Eastern territories. It's why I'm in this big house, thanks to them.
In that big house with what looks like a console room behind. It's
the green lights are on.
Quite a remarkable setup you've got there.
Okay, I don't want to make you seasick. I'll give you just a little quick flash. Okay,
please
because
do.
When I was a little lad, all I ever wanted was things that made kind of funny noises. And so if I go here, that's the piano that I learned a boogie woogie on. Behind there, that's a little Moog synth. Up there, what have we got? A lot of junk. They're all different synths, Korgs. That's the Odyssey. That is a Moog. That's a Voyager. That's the mixer, which I don't use these days. But what's been really naughty is since lockdown. During lockdown, I wasn't getting out much. I have a desk at which I work, and the desk has a screen and a keyboard and a mouse. Unfortunately, it's got just a little bit cluttered now. And so this stuff all just sits there. And these days, I'm still doing a bit of creative stuff. I've got a book coming out in America end of next year, which I keep having to update. But mainly, when I just sit there, just being blank, I just push buttons and make completely off-the-planet noises.
Well, if that's not an incentive for anybody listening on Spotify to come on over to the YouTube video and have a look in person, then I don't know what is. That's fantastic.
You look terrified.
I read a few interviews and frequently asked questions, and you do talk about your vintage keyboards and that sort of thing a lot.
Formative life thing. Just when I could read, I was bought this book by my mum, and I found this copy just last year in a bookshop in Harrogate, and it's the Ladybird book, and it's magnets, bulbs, and batteries. And it just shows you how you can wire up a light bulb with a piece of wire and a battery and use a paperclip as a switch. And I thought that was the best thing. And then buzzers and that. And ever since then, I've been totally addicted to little wires and flashy lights. I mean, well, this is my addiction, really.
I mean, that book is a great link back to your childhood, because I do want to know a little bit more. Were you more interested in books like that as a child, non-fiction and learning about the world, than sort of the stories and the silly fiction books?
That's good. That is a very good question. Yeah, and I still am. In terms of fiction, if I pick up a book, I happen to see it, so one of my daughters has bought one, and I read it and I like it, I
Mm.
tend to see what else that author's done and maybe read a few of those. I'm not terribly good at going and discovering for myself. I will read on recommendation, but factual books, particularly anything with weird numbers in it, I just absorb the stuff. And this in particular, that got me doing with little wires and bulbs and stuff. So yeah, generally non-fiction's my stuff. I've got a great mate called Mike Barfield, who he's now writing non-fiction books. He did a brilliant one about roller coasters and other inventions, lovely colour books, and he's doing really well. But they're such a good read, and I find myself really enjoying. I like to come away having learnt something.
Mm.
I mean, my favourite fiction author, if you like, and it's a bit biased, is a bloke called Philip Reeve. And he actually illustrated most of the Murderous Maths books and the Urgum the Axemans and that. And he's a great mate. And so I have to read his books because otherwise we're going to meet up and all of a sudden you haven't read my book, you know. So, but they are stunning. They're absolutely absorbing. But what I really like about them is that every book he writes, there'll be a little bit of science that he's put in that I didn't know. And I mean, occasionally he researches it. He'll put it in, but then he'll ask me to proof check. You know, does that work? And I'll check it for him. But what I like about the fact is, even though his books are surreal and fantastic and whoa, different worlds, there's still really, really odd little things. And I think, oh, that's good. So that's what I like about Philip's stuff. There's always something to learn from them.
Do you think it's important for fiction, works of fiction, to have a little something, especially for young people as well, to that they can learn about, or can it be that it can just take you to a world and be a bit of escapism, pure escapism?
It depends what you're writing for. I mean, the only fiction I've written quite a lot. I'm going for laughs. You know, if it's funny, it's in. That's the end of the line, really. But thinking back to the Agatha Parrott series, a couple of them have got magic tricks, which I explain at the end. So you've come away with something. I think it's like a little bonus if you can come away with something. But it depends what you're writing. I'm not saying everybody who writes fiction ought to make sure you take something off Google or Wikipedia and put that in as well. I'm not saying that, but just for me, you just come away feeling like I've read all that and I've taken something away that makes me a little bit cleverer.
Yeah, it's a little bit like when you watch a stand-up show and the stand-up maybe tells you a little something about his life right at the end and maybe gets you thinking a little bit and then ends it with a joke. It's sort of, something to take away. And I wanted to kind of tell you a little story because something you said right at the beginning about your childhood really kind of interested me. When I was younger, I wanted to be an actor before I discovered public speaking, which is what I kind of found I was better at. But I sort of wanted to be an actor, and I told my great grandmother, who was an Irish woman. She was probably in her 90s when I was born, and lived all the way up to just under 100, I think, something along those lines. And I told her I wanted to be an actor, and she always said, "That's not a real job. That's not a real job." And then she came to see me in one of my school plays, and she said, "Oh, actually, yeah, maybe you could give this a go." So I just wondered, what did your parents think about you sort of being a performer and kind of wanting to show
They
off?
were really, really good about it
Mm.
because my parents effectively sent me to private school for most of my school days.
Mm.
And having gone through my sort of public school, A levels, I managed to fail Cambridge twice. The only reason I wanted to get into Cambridge was to get into Cambridge footlights and therefore, join the likes of Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie and all these other people that you've heard of, on the sort of immediately you're well connected once you've been through
Yeah.
footlights. That's the only reason I wanted to go to Cambridge. But I mean, bizarrely, I went to Durham. But while we were at Durham, we did reciprocal shows, and so I got to meet all these people anyway, which
Oh,
was great.
really?
Me and Hugh Laurie and Emma Thompson, we all did our first TV job together. Yep, all on the same program. Yeah,
Wow. What program was that?
it was done by East Anglia Telly. It was a bit of a Cambridge Footlights review. But if anybody says to me, "What is my most hated song in the world?" without hesitation, the answer is "Send in the Clowns." Do you know "Send in the Clowns"?
Not by
Isn't it
name, but
strange?
perhaps I would.
It's a Sondheim song. But Emma Thompson was singing a parody of "Send in the Clowns," and I was the person playing the piano. Now I can play by ear, not badly, and if I'm going to play something I don't know very well, providing it's not difficult, I can fudge it. Yeah. But they passed me the sheet music. I don't read sheet music. And here's the sheet music. By the way, it's written in a key of E flat, but Emma wants to do it in B, which is all of a sudden you're sort of transposing. And there's no button. This is a real piano. It's not like a kind of keyboard these days. And in the middle of it has got a different key change in that. And we had time for one take and no rehearsal. and I just so hate that song. Emma Thompson was lovely, but the song, I don't know how I got onto that. There you go.
I mean, that's brilliant. So when you're working with these people, do you know that they're going to go on to great things? Did you have any kind
I
of
had no
inkling?
idea. I
No.
did know they were in Footlights, obviously, and Footlights is never going to do them any harm. I mean, one or two of the people in the same show have gone off and done other things, but uh, Hugh Laurie, I'm going to say I'm going back a lot of years now. When I used to do stuff in the BBC, I used to present science programs for a while in the BBC, mainly for school telly and children's. And in the BBC canteen, you saw everybody. And I bumped into Hugh Laurie a couple of times. Another guy is Robert Bathurst, Bob Bathurst, who does a lot of drama. He's a name
Yeah.
that a lot of people will know, Bob Bathurst. Lovely guy. He was on that same TV show with Bob. And we still have a vague connection in that we follow each other on Twitter and occasionally we reply to each
Okay.
other's things.
I mean,
I was chuffed when Bob followed me on Twitter. I thought, well, I've got a star following me on Twitter. So that was
he's the
really
sort
good.
of chap that a lot of people would recognize by face, isn't he? Maybe if they don't
Yeah,
recognize the
yeah,
name, he's
yeah.
in a lot of things.
Again, I'm absolutely smashing that. I keep talking about how nice these people are, but they are, and I think it should be known. They work hard on it, and it works. Yeah, it's good. It's I worked many years with a bloke called Keith Chegwin, who I don't know if you know Keith.
Yep.
Again, he used to work on Saturday morning telly presenting stuff, and I used to be his warm up on the TV programs, and occasionally I got to be in camera. But also, he did a lot of gigs, going up and down nightclubs, collecting checks for charity. He was absolutely tireless. And he always took somebody with him just to watch his back, drive the car when he needed. And I worked with Keith for about 7 years. And Keith was so clever in that sometimes people were terribly abusive to him. Transport cafe at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he'd already been awake for 24 hours, and people are just chucking stuff at him, trying to wind him up. And he'd just laugh and shake it off like a joke. And I remember saying to him once, I don't know how you do that. And he says, to be honest, the one thing that I can do to upset them is not rise to it. And he did it ever so well. But one or two people I saw in similar circumstances, and they rose to it. And the people who saw that will have got the wrong impression of possibly a nice geezer. So that's fine for you, Louis. Careful with your public
Yeah.
speaking. Don't get too big. You'll have all this.
I mean, it's incredibly mature to be able to kind of look past that and not try and get a rise, because I mean, it's all well and good thinking, but in the moment, that's tough. And there must be a certain level of fame where people think they know you, because they've seen you on TV, or maybe they've heard
Oh,
you
all the
talk.
time. Everywhere I went with Keith, no matter what we were doing, we're trying to have a quiet drink in a bar or something, somebody would come up and say, I've got a cat that weighs 17 stone. Can you get it on Blue Peter? And we just had these really weird conversations. And part of my job was Keith would chat for a couple of minutes. I'd say, Keith, I'm really sorry, but we've got to phone Mark at 10 o'clock. Sorry to mind. I'm really sorry to break it away. And Keith would say, oh, what a shame. I'm going to have to go and leave it. I'll sign a napkin. There you go, lovely. Whisk him round the corner. So, go for that. But that was part of the job, was getting him out of those little encounters. I mean, so that he could be as pleasant as possible. Because
I bet.
if he was on his own, it's a lot more awkward when there's somebody nudging his elbow and he has to go. You see, that's part of the job.
Do you get recognized yourself? Do you get asked for autographs, that sort of thing?
One of the nicest things about being an author is I don't. It sounds odd because years ago, we're talking 1980s, when I did the schools telly and a bit of children's telly I used to do. Occasionally, you get recognised. And if it's just one or two people, it's really nice, and it's nice to have a chat. But sometimes, maybe a couple of people are sort of going alone, you're being nice, and somebody go, who's that then? Is he famous? No, I've never heard of him. I think, oh God, here we go. And it starts piling in, you think, I don't need this. If you're an author, nobody knows what you look like or who you are. But then when you go to a book festival and you walk out on stage, and gosh, sometimes I get 1,000 people come to see me, then you go and sign books and they queue for 2 hours to get a book signed. And then you're a big star. It's brilliant. Then 10 minutes later, you can go to the pub round the corner. Nobody knows who you are again. So you can just click it on and click it off. It's absolutely perfect.
That must be a really nice blend, to be honest. A
It
certain
is. It's
level
perfect.
that's
It's
yeah,
brilliant.
you
Yeah.
choose when it
Yeah.
happens, and
Yeah. You get that little sort of showbiz buzz, but then it's not with you day and night
Mm.
following you around. What I did have to do, I had to go back in the days when everybody's phone used to be in a big phone directory. I had to go ex-directory, which I wasn't happy about because I had elderly relatives who would never remember my phone number. But I was getting phone calls from Taiwan at 4 o'clock in the morning from kids that had read me books, wanted to chat about this and that. And they just didn't understand, I don't need to talk to you, and certainly don't need to talk to you in Taiwanese at 4 o'clock in the morning.
You're Mr. Worldwide, aren't you? Taiwan, Kenya, Canada.
I
Your
am, as it
impact is,
happens. Yeah, I am.
yeah.
Yeah. What's
I mean,
so funny is that amongst the different titles that I've written, apparently the Murderous Maths books, which had a good time in the UK and still available, but they've kind of done it over here in what we call this territory. But it's only about sort of 5 or 6 years ago they've been taken on properly by a major Chinese publisher. And when I say China, I'm sorry, I'm being a wee bit vague. But prior to that, South Korea, my sales in South Korea were bigger than in the UK for 2 years. And that's kind of strange. And I get emails from all these kids, and they all start off their emails with, I do apologize if my English isn't very good. That's how they start it. You want to see my Korean? It's not, I've got nothing. But they all start to say, well, I do apologize about my poor English. I mean,
I mean, it's a shame, isn't it? Really, that all of these other amazing people across the world speak two, three, four languages, and in England, barely anybody can even speak half of a second language.
Oh, it does amuse me the fact I've got a shelf over there with books on it. It must have 50 books on it. And I wrote them, but I can't read them. I mean, it's not bizarre. It's not great. I can have a little go at the Spanish ones, and I can have a little go. There's one or two in French, and a little go at the Italian ones. They're sort of close European languages. But the ones that don't use the Western alphabet, I really, really haven't got a chance. Very
See.
pleased to see them there. They're very proud of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Did any of them have any issues in the translation? Potentially, you might not know, but
It's something you touched on earlier about English humour translating. And one of the Murderous Maths books, or two or three of them actually, got translated into Japanese. And it's not very often that the people doing the translation make contact, but this lady did. And she even sent me a photograph of the view from her window, and it's Mount Fuji. I mean, it's like the coolest place to be, this window that she worked. But she said, there's a thing here about an owl having its ears lopsided, one's higher than the other. Tell me, is this a fact or is it an English joke? And I said, well, actually, it's a fact, but personally, I find it quite funny. But it was just nice that she actually made the point, because apparently, when it came to translation, she'd have to translate it in a different way depending on what I was aiming at with whatever it was about. One of them books, I don't know. I can't remember what it was about now.
now
Symmetry.
that
It's
must
about
be a
symmetry.
tricky job translating a book with jokes in it to a whole new audience. I mean,
Jokes, I think it's quite tricky. What is really tricky is I had a weird little bit of unexpected fame about 4 years ago with a picture book. No, I got it here. Excuse me, bald head. There we
you've got
are.
everything to hand, haven't
You
you?
see that?
Yeah.
That woman I'd worked with, Alice, many, many years ago, out of the blue, got hold of me and said, I'm working with a new firm now. I'm doing picture books. Have you got any ideas for a picture book? And Alice is working right next to King's Cross Station. And I'd been doing a gig in Portsmouth or something. And I said, look, Alice, let's have a meeting. And so we met in the bar at King's Cross Station. And by the time we'd left, I'd written the first lines of this. I can remember, it's 6 o'clock. We're ready for tea. Oh, what's that? It's a Runaway Pea. I'd written that on the back of a beer mat. I said, I think that's a good idea for a book. This was my fastest selling book in the UK. Absolutely bang, straight out of the tracks. And then it was taken up by the Book Trust. And every child starting school in, I think it was 2020, in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, everybody got a copy of this. And so that is just like my most successful book in the UK.
That's it. I
But
mean, just for context for anybody who's listening and potentially not watching, that is a copy of the Runaway Pea, the fastest selling. I mean, that is incredible.
it was, yeah. But it's funny you're talking about translations, though. I have the Chinese translation over there, which is beautiful. It's hardback, but this all rhymes. The whole thing rhymes and it scans. It must be murder to translate. I have no idea if the Chinese one rhymes or not. I can't read it. I must try and find it. I do have a Chinese friend in Europe, but I haven't seen him for ages. I must get him to read it and tell me, does it rhyme? Does it scan? Is it funny? Or does it just say the person that wrote this book is an idiot? Please feel sorry for him and buy it.
Please
I don't know
ignore
what
the
he says.
missing rhymes. I've always wondered that about translated poems and that sort of thing. Do they rhyme? I genuinely don't know how they do that. Do they have to change the whole sentence or?
Absolutely no idea, Louis. Absolutely
Yeah, I
no
mean
idea.
that's quite remarkable.
I mean, for me, the whole point of that book is that it rhymes, it snaps along.
Yeah,
It's every time I write a picture book, a lot of the best picture books, of course, don't need to rhyme. They're just such clever little stories. Me, I just have to rhyme. It's what I do, So, in my head. catching fire. This is a very difficult room to film in because there's like little windows and I've blacked most of them out. But if it looks like I'm on fire, I'm not. It's just the sun's moving.
It's making up for it with the incredible sort of array of items in the background. People will be looking for Easter eggs. I try to keep my background as bland as possible, and then I hide a little Easter egg in every episode related to whoever we're interviewing, so you can see the Urgum stories in the background there.
Get away! Oh, I can. That's it. Have you got? Is that this? You got all three?
Got all three. Yeah,
Is that your own book?
it is. It
The
is.
blue one is really hard to get hold of. It was the third one, and it was the one that was nominated for the Roald Dahl Funny Prize and everything. It was the one that I personally thought was the best, but due to a change in the publishers, it had the shorter shelf life it was on, and all of a sudden they stopped it, which was a little bit of an issue. But things like that happen in publishing. But it was very nice to see the blue one along with the two others. Yeah,
I didn't realize it was rare. I've had it my whole life. It's actually got a sticker on the front that says it's nominated for the Roald Dahl Funny Prize. I mean, what
I
was that
told
like?
everybody I sat there all night putting stickers on.
Was that
Somebody sat there all night putting stickers on. I didn't, but yeah,
not you?
Very pleased with that.
Like the scene in Elf where Will Ferrell spends the whole night preparing for Santa Claus to come. I don't know if you've
Oh,
seen
I've
that.
seen that, but
Yeah?
I haven't seen the whole film. But I know the bit. I know the bit you mean. Yeah.
What's it like? I mean, Roald Dahl, that's a big name in your industry. What's it like being nominated for a prize with his name on it?
Well, immensely flattering. I mean, I have been nominated for quite a few things, but I'm trying to think, what's it like? It's strangely awkward, really,
Really?
because when you nominate, it's very flattering. This book doubled my lifetime tally of first prize book awards because it won two. And the only other times, the only other time I've actually won what you might call the top prize, I won a very good prize. So I've got a colour Murderous Maths book, and I didn't even know about this till afterwards. There'd been a whole thing down in London, and the publishers hadn't told me. They'd gone on my behalf. They thought, oh, we don't want to drag him all the way down from York for this. And to be honest, I probably would have declined anyway, because I've been to so many of these book things where you don't win. And you think, I've spent all day to come here and do the happy clap, and the person that wins isn't there. That's always, well, I'm afraid so and so can't be here tonight. And all the people that haven't won, we've all turned up going, oh, God,
They've sent in the video.
yeah, well, I won one for that. And then I won one for the first Agatha Parrott book, a big one in Sheffield, which I was there for. And it's the only time I've been on stage to pick up a prize and I burst into tears.
With happy tears, I hope.
Oh, yeah, I've been preparing the speech all my life. As soon as I got up there, well, first of all, it won the best category in short stories. And I got up there, did my speech that I've been preparing for like the last 35 years. So I did my speech, thank you, sat down. Then while I was busy sitting in my seat, texting everybody, said, I've won something. Johnny Duddle, lovely artist, sitting next to me going, go on, get up. What do you mean, Johnny? I've got it. No, you've won the whole thing. You've won best in show sort of thing. You've won the overall big one. But went on stage and that was it. I was just gone.
Oh God! I mean, to win an award is your heart must have dropped. That would have been a real moment to see. I wish it was recorded. Was it recorded?
I think so in Sheffield, yeah. And the bloke hosting it, the very, very funny poet mate of mine, he's called That Poetry Bloke. His real name's, pardon me, Craig. But he's never let me forget that. Never let me forget. He's a horrible, horrible man.
Do you have a dream award that you'd like to win?
I'd like to have won the Roald Dahl Funny Prize. It's the only one that I would have. I mean, I'm grateful to all of them. I'm grateful for the nominations. Sounds like I'm being churlish. I'm not. It's lovely to be nominated. But the one I wanted was the Roald Dahl Funny Prize.
And I don't know, who won it that year? Do you know? Who did you lose out to?
Yes, bizarrely, I do. It was Andy Stanton when it was Mr. Gum. And you think my book up for the prize was Urgum, Urgum, and his book was Mr. Gum, Mrgum. I was one letter out, Louis. But I may say, Andy's very clever bloke, and he went on to write an awful lot of those Mr. Gum books, and he kept the quality up and everything. So it's yeah, obviously I'd like to have won it, but I don't feel I was beaten by an inferior.
No, I remember those Mr. Gum books, actually. I was always a bigger fan of Urgum, and I genuinely mean that when I say that Urgum the Axeman was my favorite book. Yeah. I went to a comedy for kids show when I was 9 years old, and Josh Widdicombe was one of the comedians who's gone on to be quite a big comedian. And I was sat in the front row with my mum, which is never a good place to be sat in a comedy show. And they were talking, and they asked me what my favorite book was, and I said Urgum the Axeman, and he's then spent the next 10 minutes sort of making jokes about Urgum the Axeman. It was the punchline of every joke, because I guess he expected me to say the Hungry Caterpillar or whatever the other kids were reading. But yeah, it really is. It's a remarkable.
Nice little delayed. And I do know Josh Widdicombe. I have four daughters, and all of them are much more tuned in with the modern comedy scene than I am. But yeah, he features very highly in there. He's up there list, yeah.
He's up there. He wasn't back then though. I'll tell you that. And my
No?
my copy of Urgum was well, still is. It's not in great condition, to be honest. I've taken it in the bath. I've taken it to Tunisia. It's been to 3 continents.
I love it when when somebody's bought a new book and they come up, you sign it, that's great. But what I really like is when they bring up a book and they've been reading it for sort of, it's been in the bath, dropped in the sandpit, whatever, and it's tattered as heck. And then you get to sign it. That's what I really like. Signing a really, really batty old one. I love that.
Shows its love, doesn't it? Shows its love. But it's quite amazing to me that especially with books that are maybe a little bit younger than Urgum, but like The Hungry Caterpillar. I mean, I'm sure that's in the top 5 highest selling books of all time. I read the other day, or something along
Oh, it's
those lines.
ridiculous, The Hungry Caterpillar. Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
how do you think it is that books like that get picked up, and that's the book for all children? Because to me, I'm not a child, but a lot of them at that sort of age level are fairly similar. What is it about?
I have no idea. I wrote The Runaway Pea, and immediately they asked for a sequel and then another sequel, and so there's 3 Runaway Peas. But he's a pea. You can't do much. It's quite hard to sort of like put him in a situation and keep the laughs coming, because he's just a pea. He hasn't got arms and legs or anything. He's just a pea. That's all he is. But having done the 3rd book, I said, there's no more. And I said, please, 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 the 4th book, please. And during the end of lockdown, and I managed to sort of break out the 4th book, by which time I said, yeah, I'm really sorry. The pea's moved on. And also the editor I worked with had left. And so I've done this book, and nothing never got published. It's sitting there waiting for some opportunities to take it up. But I don't know, because as well as The Runaway Pea, I started to do other picture books. I must have written about a dozen, and of them, only one of them has been published. And that one, it's been beautifully done in a hardback. It's not coming out in this country. In fact, the first country to put it out is, I believe, Taiwan. And get this, it's called The Snowman's Nose. I don't know if they've got snow in Taiwan, but they've got a book called The Snowman's Nose coming out this Christmas.
You must have a very dedicated fan club in Taiwan. It must be.
I think so, because the maths books and the simplified Chinese text, I think they're printed bound in Taiwan. But I think there's a certain amount of the readership there as well. I only know from the emails I get that always starts off, "I'm sorry about my imperfect English." That's the only reason I know.
It must be so nice to get that sort of feedback, though. I mean, I listened to a podcast on my run this morning by a pair called I think it was called Goodreads with Dad and Lila, and what they do is it's a young girl. She doesn't sound much older than maybe 4 or 5. Very, very sweet, and her dad, and they twice a week they read books to their audience, and The Runaway Pea was one of them, and they were saying how much they loved it. And I don't know if
I think they've been in touch.
Oh.
I think I had an email. So I think Lordy, just change computer, so I'll be able to find it anyway, even if I have. But that rings a bell. That rings a bell. It's, I mean, the emails and messages. It's one of the joys about email. It's now very easy for anybody to send you a message rather than stamp an envelope, and also easy to reply. We don't have to put stamp an envelope, which is so expensive now. But yes, that rings a bell at an email. My Agatha Parrott books, which I wrote really aimed at ages sort of 8, 9, 10. I got loads of emails saying my little girl, it's the first book she won't let me read to her. She wants to read it to herself. And they're usually age sort of 6. So it became kind of like a breakthrough book for little kids. It's the first time, no, go away, mummy, I'm reading this.
That's amazing. Do you think about that sort of thing when you're writing? You sit there, you sit at your desk, and do you ever think that maybe this might be somebody's first book, or this might be somebody's childhood favorite book, like Urgum is for me?
No, you can't. I mean, obviously, in the back of your mind, you always hope something like that. But let's talk about the other series. I mean, the Murderous Maths series is the series that I'm best known for, and it pretty much eclipses everything else. The Horrible Histories had come out. Horrible Science had come out, Nick Arnold's books.
I was asked to write one book called Murderous Maths, and I said, "What a daft idea! Who is going to buy a book with the word maths on the front cover?" And my agent said, "Listen, nobody knows who you are, and you're being offered an advance. I've never heard of this before. For Christ's sake, take it." And so I took it, and I said, "I only write the book on the condition it mustn't look like a maths book. It's got to have jokes in it, and I need decent illustrations. I want it to look like a sort of like funny comic with numbers and puzzles and stuff, but essentially, it's got to be a good read." So this book kind of got put out there, and I thought, yeah, a few jokes, few numbers, tick the boxes. And they say that book is still selling. Oh, how many tens of thousands a year around the world? And then the emails from that have been extraordinary. From I get an awful lot, say, from sort of Singapore, China itself. Lady from Chicago was emailing me the other day, and her little lad had taken something out of one of the books, a little puzzle, and made it. And could I look at the video of this little lad doing this thing he'd made? And also other people who have children with special needs like numbers but won't read, and some of them don't communicate very well. But I've had really touching emails saying these are the only books my child will read, the only books they will actually discuss or talk about, and it's just made such a difference to their lives. I should plan that. I plan to do a few jokes and make a few quid, to supplement my income from being a pub piano player. That's what I plan to do. So when those ones come through, I've got goosebumps now just thinking about it.
It's amazing, isn't it? Some people really, really connect with maths as a concept. You see people who are non-verbal and on the autism spectrum and that sort of thing, who can pretty much find a new lease of life through maths, especially in schools. It's incredible, really, that people connect with it so much. And I suppose the beautiful thing about it is, you say it's still doing really well. Maths doesn't change, I suppose, really. Your books are not going to be outdated. The math stays the same.
Methods have updated slightly. One of the ones I wrote back over 20 years ago, the essential arithmetics, it actually explained things like how to do long division with jokes, obviously. Mm-hmm. But the actual methods taught in schools changed. Funny enough, they've all reverted back to where I was. But what happened was I got a chance to revise that book 10 years ago, 2014. And so I revised the book. And although I kept in essentially the same stuff, I was able to incorporate the new methods. But now, as you quite rightly say, number 2 + 2 makes 4 is not going to change. Doesn't matter where in the universe you are, 2 + 2 makes 4. And so that's the nice thing about maths. It's a very, very much a universal, constant thing. Once you've got the basic grounding of it, you can take it anywhere.
Mm. So how did they find you to ask to write these stories? Were you a famous mathematician at the time? Were you?
No, I've met a few. They terrify me. They're so clever, and they all think I'm clever as well. I just sit there going, like that. Right, Saturday morning TV. So I'm working on Swap Shop, warming up on Saturday morning telly, and I'm writing letters to everybody, trying to get other jobs on the telly, whatever there might be to do, whatever to go. And I was in touch with a woman called Anne Wood, who's best known for creating Tinky Winky, Dipsy, La La, and Poe. And Anne and I were great friends, and I did a lot of work with Anne, writing and devising stuff for very little kids. But some of the stuff I'd done with Anne, she said, this isn't for telly, but this would make a good book. Would you like to see if you can make a book out of it? And she put me in contact with a lady called Marilyn Malin. And Marilyn, from that conversation, was my agent for about 30 years. Sadly, she just died 2 years ago, Marilyn. Without Marilyn, I'd never have had a book published. But Marilyn did a puzzle book based on some of the stuff I'd done for Anne Wood. And this little puzzle book got to the ears of Scholastic. And I did 4 puzzle books for Scholastic, just the sort of things you sit and scribble in, and that was fun. Let's move on. And they did kind of like surprisingly well. At that time, they were looking for somebody to write a book called Murderous Maths. And so they said, why don't we just ask the weird bald fella who wears a tartan scarf on a hot day and see if he writes a book called... And that's how it happened. There you go. You asked, you heard.
do you ever feel a little bit of competition with some of the other books in that series? Horrible Histories and the Science? No.
Sorry, it sounds like I snapped there. I've been extraordinarily fortunate. There's a nice guy called Philip Arder, who's an author I know very well. And Philip has written loads of books, clever books. He said, you're so lucky. You found your own little niche. There's nobody else competing with you doing the maths books. And it's true, because the Horrible History books, although Terry was the original, there's a lot of similar stuff out there now, which Terry's not very happy about, I have to say, Terry, the author. Nick Arnold, again, his books were kind of original, but a lot of people kind of climbed onto that kind of bandwagon as well, following Nick. But to my knowledge, nobody's ever tried to. Maybe they looked at my books and thought that's not worth copying. I don't know. But anyway.
Or maybe they thought they couldn't compete.
I've always felt I've been the only one that does what I do, which has been really nice.
It must be a source of pride, I suppose, you know, to have the market cornered.
Well, luck. There's an awful lot of luck. I just happened to hit the ground running at the right place. And also when I wrote the book, I was lucky in that I knew I had to have a few characters to sort of carry the stories through. And at the time, I hadn't realised I'd done it. But when they asked me to write book 2, I thought, I can use these people again. If I just adapt that, then I can make the stories go this way. And then book 3 and book 4. All of a sudden, the same cast of characters works right the way through the series. And it was a complete piece of luck. I mean, out of the first book, almost everybody in the first book appears in all the other books because for some reason, I just got it right first time. Very lucky. Very, very lucky.
You say luck, but it's probably a little bit more than that, isn't it? It's probably hard work on the first one. But I actually wanted to ask you about that, funnily enough, because obviously we've spoken about, I think, over 25 languages Murderous Maths has been translated into. It maybe more now, I'm not sure. But there's also 15 of them. Is that right? Have I got the number there? 15?
Yeah, it depends what you count. What we call the B format books, the old originals, it's a B format book. That's a B format book. Yeah, standard thing, and a black and white, that kind of size. Yeah. Of those, I think there were 14 individual different ones. And then what happened was they culled it to a box of 10. And so 4 of the books basically fell away. But then I was given an opportunity to redraft the books in new versions like this, which is slightly bigger and it's bigger print. Yeah. And that one's actually an original. That was all new stuff. But the other books in that new series are actually rehashes of the old ones. So, yeah, the originals, there was 14 B formats, and then there's the big colour book, which is a completely separate thing on its own. And then if you're going to look at everything with a different cover and Murderous Maths on the front, there's over 20 of them. Some of them have stuff from the other books. And that sounds a bit cheeky, but we do warn everybody, that's the old stuff. You can't buy that now. Here's the new stuff. Meet the new stuff, same as the old stuff, you know.
But better.
Thanks, Louis.
better and updated.
How got the sun in York normally never does this. I can't believe you're seeing sun in York.
It's amazing to, yeah. I mean,
I'm getting a little bit of a tan up here, isn't it nice?
I mean, you said you've been away for the last few weeks, so you've probably got enough of a tan as it is from Whitby, was it?
I don't go chasing the sun. I don't go chasing the sun. It's, yeah. I'll give you a holiday tip. You've got somewhere fascinating to go to that we loved. Tenby, South Wales, Tenby. A magical, enchanting little town. It's got medieval walls. It's got beaches. It's got a castle on the beach. It's just, there we are. Little holiday plug. That's where we went a few weeks ago.
Do you only go to places that end in BY?
Pretty much. Well, I was first raised in Selby, Selby. There you go, 15 miles from here. So,
well, there we go. Then trying to recreate your childhood every time.
That's a really weird observation. Is that I like that a lot. It's great.
I find myself making weird observations. Maybe it's growing up reading your books.
Oh God, I've twisted you. Oh dear.
You have indeed. One thing that I wanted to ask about, just going back in time a little bit as well. I read, and this was on Wikipedia, so you'll have to correct me if this is not true. I read you were in a pop group. Were you? Is this true? Is this lies? Are you the next one?
Now, if you want a bit of fiction, you want to go to Wikipedia and start reading stuff on Wikipedia. It's either Camberwick Green or the Grumbleweeds they associate me with. I can tell you how that came about. In 1982, when I've been doing a bit of telly, I was doing a summer season at Bridlington. I was the compere, and there was a singer, there was a comedian, there was myself who was just larking around. Then the second act was a comedy band called Camberwick Green. It was half a band, but half did sketches and stuff. And for some reason, somebody who updates Wikipedia had said, yes, I was with this band when they had a single in the charts. And I've never chosen to correct it. I think that's great. It's as near as I'm going to get to chart successes, though.
So,
I mean, the only thing I ever corrected on Wikipedia about me, I thought, I'm not having this, was they said I was born in Durham, and I wasn't. Much as I love Durham, I went to uni, I was born in York. It's the only thing I ever corrected on Wikipedia. But every couple of years, it's changed. It's like reading about a different person every couple of years. People update it, meaning well, but quite often it's wrong.
It's remarkable that people make the effort to want to do that, though, isn't it? To sit there and go, I'll go and tell someone else's
Terribly
story.
flattering, and it's quite a long entry all about me. And people have sort of, he writes the books. Then the Murderous Maths books have got their own wiki entry. Plus, I had a book of puzzles called Jar Posco's, rather strange name, but I'm trying to do, Sudokus and that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'll come up with a version of these puzzles. And Jar Posco's had their own page on Wikipedia with how to solve them, and they only ever made 30 of them. It's weird. I mean, they're all actually on my website. I now do a simplified version of the same puzzles, just called K-Puzz, and they put them out on Twitter every single day. But they don't get a Wikipedia page. But the Jar Posco's did. Who did that?
Yeah, that was one of the first things that came
flattering.
up, when I was looking up a little bio about you, it said, creator of a logic puzzle. And I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And, quite an inventive name as well. I wonder where you got that from. Your name is a really interesting one, isn't it? I mean, you probably get this question a lot, but I'm a little bit fascinated by etymology, sort of the study of names. I mean, my name is Louis Preston, and I learned fairly recently that Preston does not come from the town in up north, but actually it originally comes from being the son of a priest, so sort of priest's son. And yes, so that kind of worked its way down into Preston. Do you know anything about the kind of background of your name?
Yeah, I know all about it. Yeah,
go on.
I went to Cambridge University and met my father. They got married in August '55. I was born in May 1956. While she was on honeymoon, she took with her a book that she'd been reading, while she was at uni, called the Laxdale Saga, a history of the Icelandic peoples. And as I was a direct result of the honeymoon, I got a name out of this book. So I was an ancient Icelandic hero. There you go.
See, this is why I love to ask about people's childhood and upbringing, that sort of thing, because they do inform everything about where they've become as a person. Your name came from a book, and now you write books for a living. I mean, that's quite remarkable, and it tells you more about a person than.
Oh Lord, yeah, I'm just thinking, you think there's kids are going to be born called Urgum? That would be amazing.
Would you like that?
Wow, wouldn't that would be unbearable if that happened. That'd be fantastic. Oh, dear. Professor Fiendish. Oh, I'm thinking of all the silly names I've got in my books now.
Agatha, or even the Runaway Pea.
Runaway Pea. That's a cracking little name, yeah.
So I was just going to ask you. I read something that really, really made me and a friend of mine chuckle when I was looking into you. I read that you had an act when you were in university with your comedy group that involved a ventriloquist dummy that wasn't able to speak. How on earth does that work?
Somewhere in the cupboards behind me that you can't see, Oliver the puppet is still there. He's still up there. It was the most extraordinary. It's like a freaky clown rag doll that a friend at university had, a lovely girl called Sally. And one time I went down to see she's a bit miserable about something, and I was just trying to cheer her up a bit. And this puppet, I discovered that if you put your hand round into the puppet's sleeve, you can just make its arm move. So all this puppet can do is play with its arm. And it gives it a very limited... all right. Gives it a very limited repertoire of what it could do. And then when I was trying to be funny for a living, I had a whole sketch with my ventriloquist puppet, which doesn't talk. And it gets quite coarse, to be put it bluntly. I mean, he starts off by picking his nose, then he picks my nose, and it just don't ask. And so I'm sitting there with this rather freaky-looking puppet thing.
I mean, just the concept of a ventriloquist dummy that can't talk is hilarious.
I'm trying to get it out of the cupboard. I think the house will collapse, so I think we'll leave that. And also, I don't know who's watching this podcast. I don't want you to lose people who are shocked at the material I'm putting out there. But that was the puppet. Anyway, Oliver the puppet.
I just needed to know how it worked for my own peace of mind, even outside of the podcast. That is fascinating. I mean, that on the
it's purely a ragdoll. I had a loose shirt. I could put my hand up there. I'll tell you, when we went to America in 1979, I think it was, we took a university group and we toured up and down the east coast of America. Then one time we got so close to the Niagara Falls, we could actually go over to the Canadian side. And I had the puppet with me. And as we're coming back through customs, we got stopped and very suspicious of these English students who'd gone to Canada and come back, thinking it was a drugs thing going on. And of course, they find this puppet. And because I've been playing with the puppet so much and used it for so many gigs, it was all very warm, very, very stitched up, and they just thought it was full of stuff. And he said, "Hey, okay, give us a doll. We're going to rip this open." The guy got his knife. I said, "Oh, please don't do that. This is like a part of a comedy act." And he goes, "Comedy?" And they said, "Yeah, look, can I show you?" And they said, "Okay." And so there's these three rather sour-looking guys, Canadian border guys, American border guys. My mates are sitting there in the van wetting themselves, thinking, "This is awful, is this?" And so I'm sitting there going, "Hello, Oliver. Say hello to the nice people." And Oliver's doing his wrist gesture and all this stuff. And he picked it up. And eventually these three guys just completely collapsed in laughter and said, "Okay, I don't know what you got in there, but I wish we had some of that." And they let me through.
There's absolutely no way that's not a scene from a sitcom. That is, I mean, you've got to write a sitcom about your life.
It's just one of them kind of events that kind of happens when you walk around with a weird rag doll, I suppose.
Oh, thank you for answering that. Really, for my own peace of mind. Just to bring it back to Urgum. I mean, I'm going to kind of ask a little bit, probably more about that than what you're used to hearing about that.
I'd love to talk about Urgum. I mean, we wrote the books, must have been at least 20 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just nice it's come up again. Yeah, what do you want to know?
It's so one thing that I noticed, because I've read it a few times, even since I was a child, and the last few months I've been rereading all three. And one thing that always I note every year, and before I tell you this, I better tell the audience. Urgum the Axeman is a series of books for young people about a barbarian called Urgum who goes away on a hunt, and by the time he comes back, his gods, who he's the last true believer of, have given him a daughter to try and calm him down, because he has seven boys who are all a bit rowdy. So that's kind of the basics. But one thing that always stands out to me is that the book is very 2024 in its themes, to be honest. I mean, you know, Urgum is a sort of violent and sort of brash guy, but he only ever seems to be defeated by the women in his life. They seem to be the only people who can ever sort of hold him accountable for anything. And even with the two gods, there's two twin gods, you know, a male and a female, and the male one is kind of a bit of an idiot compared to the female one. She comes up with the ideas. Was that a deliberate choice? Is it something that you've deliberately done in your work?
Well, it's slightly lazy stereotyping, I'm afraid. It's my very brief attempts at the comedy scene back in the 80s. If you were a bloke walking on stage, you immediately got a lot of abuse from a lot of the women in the audience, because immediately they imagine you're going to be racist, sexist, whatever it was. It was very difficult. You had to be very funny. I mean, people like Rick Mail and that, of course, were brilliant. They would storm it. But the only way to get through is to always be the fall guy as the bloke and let the women get the upper hand. This is, I don't know, just a position I found myself in, and still do. I mean, let's face it, I've got a wife and 4 daughters. Welcome to my world. But it's just also, from my own perception, it's funnier. I mean, blokes, generally speaking, they're sort of like masculine, yeah, we know it all ones. They're easy to take the mickey out of. And if you've got a couple of intelligent sort of female characters, least of all his own daughter, Molly, the 10-year-old, it's just kind of funny, you know, like the big strong guy is brought down. And in the same book, when she first meets him and he's horrified to find he's got a daughter, she says, "Daddy, I've got you a present." And I don't remember, she made him a daisy chain. And this is a guy that, you know, fights cobras for laughs and, you know, headbutts rhinos and buffaloes and stuff. And all of a sudden, she puts on this little daisy chain around his neck. And all the boys go, "Eh!" He's going, "If you think this is funny, you come and laugh at my face." I can't remember the line. And all of a sudden, the hardest thing he's ever done as a bloke is wear a daisy chain. And it just gives so many opportunities to sort of like kind of twist what's good, what's bad. And yeah, that's kind of how it works. And of course, his wife completely controls him by raising her eyebrow.
One eyebrow, yeah.
Anybody else, axes, swords, he could take that on. But just one slightly mean look from his wife, that's absolutely, sorry, dear, you know, like that was because he knows she really can make his life miserable. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, to me, it's so sort of modern and ahead of its time. It really does touch on those themes of toxic masculinity and that sort of thing, which authors take great pain to kind of include in their works today. And you say that it kind of came quite naturally, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's when I say it's lazy stereotyping, just about everybody kind of does it in TV and drama and stuff like that. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's the kind of white bloke, middle-aged fella who is either the villain or whatever it is. It's just because if you imply that other people can be as evil as that, you can get into funny areas now. I don't blame it. I don't try and compete with it. I don't understand it. All I want to do is try and get a few laughs and not upset anybody, and that's where the books come from. Yeah.
Well, I think you achieved that, and that's. Do you think that? I mean, I suppose not. You don't even think. Do you try to include a sort of moral or message in your stories, or is it a something?
The Urgum the Axeman books, although on the face of it they're extremely violent, they're kind of not. Nobody gets it who doesn't deserve it. And when he does have fights to the death, but it's always with the most awful people who would have had him first or would have threatened something. The third book that you talked about, the Urgum and the Goo Bar, where he's given the baby to look after. Because, the twist of the end of the book is, how could you give it to the barbarian because he's the only civilized person in this desert compared to all you people? That's kind of the twist. The bottom end of it, Urgum's got a massive heart, which he hates. He hates to think he could be that soft, but he's got a massive heart. That's kind of what it's all about. That's where the comedy comes from in that.
It's great, isn't it? And to me, really, I mean, I don't know if you'll agree, but to me, Molly is kind of the main character of the series, even though it's not her on the front of.
I can tell you how she came about. Yonks ago, Philip Reeve, the wonderful, wonderful author, and I hope people know his name, wrote the Mortal Engine series, and he's got all the new stuff coming out now. But Philip did the pictures for the original Murderous Maths books. He came to stay at my house. And we're sitting in the pub where it's where I run the pub quiz now every Thursday night. And it's also on the back of envelopes and beer mats where most of my ideas came from that pub. Philip and I are sitting there. And Philip says, your Murderous Maths books, I do enjoy drawing the pictures, but I'm getting a little bit bored of circles and triangles. You possibly have a Murderous Maths book, but that doesn't have the maths in it, just the murder. Sorry, I'm just turning off my phone. That just has the murder, but without the maths. And I said, well, you've seen who's in the books. Let's take one of the characters out of it. And so we looked through the various characters, and Philip's pictures of barbarians were hilarious. He can draw the most grisly-looking people, waving swords and bits and pieces flying everywhere. But it's funny. It's kind of Tom and Jerry. It's not nasty. It's not gore. It's Tom and Jerry kind of comedy. And then once Philip had gone away, our daughter Maisie, I think must have been about 6 at the time, he sent back the most wonderful picture. Thank you, letter for thank you for having me stay. Lovely man, this Philip, nice guy. But he had Maisie the Barbarian, and this picture of this girl wearing a helmet with the horns and a little sort of frock, and holding behind her back an absolutely massive club with spikes sticking out of it like that. And I thought, we've got a book here. I thought, that's it, yeah, amazing. And I couldn't call the character Maisie the Barbarian because I got 4 daughters. It means I didn't have to write 3 more books for all the others.
Right.
And so Maisie became Molly.
That's fantastic. I mean, is that a theme across some of your ideas for books? They sort of come across, you come across them accidentally, or do you have to sit there and stare at a wall for hours until you come up with the idea?
Oh, that's tricky, isn't it? The actual truth is, it tends to be one then kicks off the next one, even from fiction to non-fiction. So with the Murderous Maths books, I wrote effectively a set of little comedy sketches involving numbers and things. And if a few characters there, well, classic one, there's a bloke called Professor Fiendish who just arrives unexpectedly at any point in the book and sets a diabolical challenge that you'll never solve. And he'll jump out of your dustbin and throw tea bags at you until you've solved it. Whatever, it's stupid stuff. But then when I was looking to do a fiction comedy book, I thought, he's funny, and I've not used him anywhere else. What will I do with him? Let's make him into a school caretaker. And so he's in the school, and he's an evil caretaker, lives in the basement of the school, and he's got periscopes that can come up, and he can eavesdrop on all the classrooms and that. And I wrote quite a lot of this stuff, and it's quite funny, but it got rejected. But as I was writing it, a couple of other characters in the book started to assert themselves. And one of them was this very talkative schoolgirl called Agatha Parrott. And so I thought, I'm going to take the last book, but rather than from his point of view, I'm going to write it with her telling the story, with her first person. And that's when the book Agatha Parrott and the Floating Head came out. And effectively, that come all the way from a Murderous Maths book. And all of a sudden, I've got a story about a little girl and her friends in a primary school just having laughs. But it sort of come through. I mean, every idea. The Runaway Pea is probably the only original idea I've ever had since I wrote the first Murderous Maths book. There you go.
I suppose that's probably quite a good moral for any audience members who are listening, who might be interested in getting started in something new, like writing. Just get that first thing done. Just do that first thing, and then I guess it kind of all spirals from there. I think
I'd always written sketches and comedy stuff. So the first Murderous Maths book was like a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. When I was asked to do numbers 2, 3, and 4, I had to just think it through a bit more. But I suppose the seeds were already there. But yeah, there are 3 different characters from the Murderous Maths books who've gone off in different directions now. And although it's all been changed, but they helped something else evolve from the original premise. Yeah. So not many original ideas. Sorry about that.
No, I mean, it makes sense. The first step is the hardest, and once you've got that, you've got the second and the third, and you've got
the one big tip about writing is write something. I know it sounds daft. You sit there and you think, oh, can't do it today. Write something. It could be awful. Just write your name 10 times and then just write it different. So the next day when you sit down, it's not a blank screen. Write anything, even if it's awful. And then the next day, or I think it also sets your brain in motion overnight when you're not realizing you're actually ticking it over. The next time you sit down, something, fingers crossed, will come up. And you keep going out and keep going. But that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You have to write something.
So if somebody comes up to you and says, I want to write for younger people, that's your advice, is it?
Pretty much, yeah, write something. Then the other thing is, a lot of people have to say, come up and say, listen, I've written this. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I'll say, writing stuff, that's the easy bit. The really hard bit is crossing it out. Chances are, if you write a 5-page story, it would make a much better 3-page story. You've got to work it out to lose 2 pages. And the hardest, the best way, but it's hard to work out what you need to cross out, is whatever you've written, get a friend, anybody, your sister, anybody, and you stand there and read it to them. And as soon as you find yourself flicking the page to get to the good bit, it's time to start crossing it out. I mean, if you can read the whole thing through and they think it's great, then you're on a winner, but you won't. I mean, if it's more than 4 or 5 pages, you will find yourself skipping down the page because you want to get to that line and say that bit. And once you've done that, cross that bit out.
That is fantastic advice. We'll put that in the trailer.
It's hard though. It's not easy. It's hard. You have to have a very good audience, somebody with a bit of patience, somebody who loves you.
Do you have anything that you regret cutting out? Any sort of huge characters specifically, or bits that you wish you'd kept?
I've never cut anything out and thought it would have been better if I'd left it in. I mean, there's certainly writing the Urgum books. I have to just sit down, and all of them, I'd set off, think, right, what's funny? What's funny? I remember the third one. I thought, right, what's funny? He gets left with a baby to look after. That's all I had in my head. And there's a little preamble as to how the baby had arisen. It's like a prologue, but I wrote that last. What's funny? What could happen? 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 And so you sort of go along like that. And then eventually you think, hang on a minute, this has gone the wrong direction here. There was a huge section where they're going through a desert on this massive stone that's being rolled by slaves. And it's quite a complicated thing. And it was brilliant. It was quite clever. And I took it out thinking, I'll save that for the next Urgum book. It's too clever on its own, is that? And so it never went into, but where it had been in that book, it would have been wrong. Even though it took me weeks to write it. It's a clever thing. But so that went, but I don't regret it going.
So was that an admission that you may have another Urgum book in your brain that you'd like to write?
I'd love to. I was hoping, we did 3, and I was hoping it would go on. And I had the ideas for, the Barbarian Olympics was one of them. And I had ideas, but what always happens is you sort of get a book and 2 or 3 things, this is going to be great. Then the lovely editor that you've been working with suddenly either disappears to Australia or has to go off and start a family or gets promoted to another job or something. And suddenly the great editor has gone. And the new editor comes in and they don't really want to carry somebody else's project along. They want to discover a new thing for themselves. And so they sort of say, well, that's been really good. You think about doing something like this now, right back to the ruddy drawing board. And it's fine with Agatha Parrott. I did 6 Agatha Parrotts. They've been up for awards. They've done really well. And then the editor and also her boss both disappeared. The new people came in and they said, we like it, but can we do something now with a boy character rather than a girl character? Whatever I did, they wouldn't take it. And it was just, that's the business, that's the breaks. I've been lucky in some ways, other ways it's frustrating, but I've been lucky.
So, I mean, that's interesting to me, though. You said you've got 6 Agatha Parrott, you've got 15 to 20 of the Murderous Maths, depending on how you look at it, as we said earlier. You got three Urgum books. I mean, is it harder to write the third one of a story or the first? Because I suppose with the third, you've already got all of your ideas and characters in there, but then the first, you're not treading over any old ground.
The Murderous Maths books, the first one I wrote very quickly. I wrote the first one alongside another book called The Gobsmacking Galaxy. I wrote them both in the same 10-week period, at the same time pretty much as we were moving house, and we had the first child. It was the most bonkers 10 weeks of my life. But the thing is, with the first Murderous Maths book, everything was an open field. I hadn't covered anything. When I said could I write a second one, all I could see was the stuff I'd already written, thinking I can't do that again, I can't do that again. So the second one was tricky. But then once I'd established the characters, writing books 3 to 10 came pretty quickly, actually. Once I sort of worked out a format for how it was going to work, then it'd be, pretty good. Agatha Parrott was the same. The first one, it took an awful lot of goes to get the first Agatha Parrott kind of right and funny and working, and to get a publisher. But once I got the first one published, and you do a second one, and really some of the snippets, even just like the odd line I'd taken out the first book, and I don't regret taking it out of the first book, but it means you got a few little things just to dig into to help you with the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth book. And so they got faster. The last of the Agatha Barrett books, I think I wrote in about a week, whereas the first one, by the time I sat down and thought I'm going to write a book, Agatha Barrett, must have been on and off about a year. So there you go.
Wow. So
once you establish the format and the template, then you start, you can work with it much easier. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the first step sort of being the hardest and then the others follow. I mean, that's
the only one the other way down was the Runaway Pea. The Runaway Pea, it was a one-off book. There's going to be no sequels. It's the only one. And when they said, could they do a sequel? The first Runaway Pea, I wrote in about 2 days. The second one probably took a couple of months. Third one took forever. And the fourth one that nobody's got to see took for even more ever, because he kind of done everything he could possibly do. And so just trying to find a new vehicles for him was tricky.
I also read that I think on your frequently asked questions section, you have a section where,
you've been right through, haven't you?
I've been right through, yes.
You found me tax return and everything, haven't you?
But I read that when you're asked why you write for children in particular, your answer is that
I don't. I write for me.
You don't. Yeah, and that's really interesting to me. You write about things that interest you. With that in mind, do you have to vary your tone at all? Do you ever get sort of, tempted to write things or things that maybe...
No, not particularly. I mean, privately, I run my pub quiz and whisper it quietly on my own in the room when I'm typing stuff and it goes wrong. You don't want to hear my language. It's dreadful, but I won't type it. I will never, I won't type it. I'm awful. When in the pub, I can go a bit over the top. It doesn't matter. Everybody knows me. It's the pub. But here, writing stuff, it's going to have my name on the front. It's I don't know. I've got a sort of code I stick to. My friend Mike Barfield, his first breakthrough book, or one of them, was The Life of a Gnu and Gnu, Pooh and You, and something like that. Because it's got the word poo in the title. Immediately people put it. I'm sorry, but I don't write the word poo in a book. I don't write it. I certainly wouldn't write it, in a headline. Nick Arnold's Horrible Science books, I think the word fart comes on every single page. That's another word I won't put in. If I need to do that, in one of the Murderous Maths books, it's how many backward pumps does it take to fill a hot air balloon? And it takes you a while to work out what a backward pump is, but you have to work out. Yeah, you'll get there in a minute.
Right.
But you have to sit. You have to sit in a bath with lots of washing up liquid, eat a lot of beans, and then count the bubbles coming off the bath. To be honest, by the time you've explained that, you've got a lot more laughs out of it than just using the word fart, haven't you? So,
well, people like the kind of challenge of a joke that they think that maybe other people won't understand, don't they? Sometimes people like to work something out.
The best jokes are the ones that you've got to think about a bit, and all of a sudden, banger! The ones where there's that little half-second moment. You go, oh, what? One of my daughters is wonderful to tell jokes to, because you can tell her a joke and she'll look at you blankly, and then 10 seconds later, suddenly she'll, you get it? And then she's just in pieces. I'd have to say she's my favourite person to tell jokes to. It just takes about 10 seconds to work out where the funny bit is.
It's so funny that you say that, though, about not including certain words. It is something that you notice a lot with children's books. That is quite an easy way to get a laugh.
That's my problem.
It's not necessarily wrong, but it's easy. But I always feel that good children's media, and that kind of goes for books, TV, that sort of thing, is ones that doesn't talk down to children, and doesn't kind of assume, you're going to find this funny because it's silly, but one that sort of tells jokes in quite a mature way. I mean, I've actually got a book that's called Why You Should Read Children's Books When You're Older, because in a way they're sort of the most pure form of storytelling, aren't they? I personally think.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, as I said, from my own experience, I write what I like. And in other words, if it makes me laugh, I'm happy with it. And I am not going to be amused by a book because it has the word fart on every single page. There's a bit of a shock value to it if you're a little kid, but it's been done. It ain't clever, it ain't funny for me. It don't work. I mean, if it's helping to tell part of a bigger story, fair enough. I'm not prissy about it. But I mean, I wish Mike all the best in the world. And his books are much cleverer than just having the word "boo" on the title. That's the great thing about Mike's books.
And how do you kind of balance those the jokes that you're clearly so passionate about getting into your books with the sort of knowledge of Murderous Maths and then the plot of things like Agatha Parrot?
Depends what I'm writing. For the math stuff, towards the end of the series, they were starting to get themed. Like there was a book, The Phantom X. It's algebra, effectively, and so I knew I had to start off by explaining having an unknown in the equation. X plus 3 equals 7. Therefore, what is X? And immediately we go to an example where somebody's in a shop probably buying axes like Urgum the Axeman might have done. And hey, he needs 3 more than 5 axes. How many more does he need? We'll just call that number X for now. And I've slipped it in without anybody knowing or caring. Suddenly we're doing algebra. But from there, I'm doing the maths first, but then putting the jokes around it. Whereas I got the parrot, let's go for the laughs. But then if there's something funny that comes in, like one of them's got a whole page of facts on zebras, just for no reason at all, because one of the characters is a bit dotty, and zebras is her favourite animal. And so, just to give Bianca her chance, there's Bianca's facts on zebras, just for no reason, and it's just all of a sudden, oh, it was nice. And the thing is, you can make it quite funny because there's 10 facts on zebras, but which one's a lie? So I can't remember the lie. The lie is the one that zebras sleep on their backs. I remember that one being. But when you read the 10 facts, you sit there and it's a bit of fun reading 10 facts. And some of them are absurd, but they're correct. And zebras are born running. I think that's the true fact. They can run the minute they're born. But zebras sleep on that. And something to think about. And at the end of the book, of course, I say actually number 7 was the lie. But obviously, for the Agatha Parrot things, the funny stuff comes first.
That's one for your pub quiz, isn't it? About the zebras running. It's something
my favourite ever pub quiz question. I'll tell you because it stuck in my mind to my favourite. And you may know this is a bit of trivia. If Celine Dion sang all the vowels in her name one at a time, the chorus of what song would she be singing?
Is it Old MacDonald?
E-I-E-I-O, yeah, isn't that just fantastic? It's not the world's hardest question, but if you want something totally ridiculous, I'd love that,
That is a great sort of icebreaker question, isn't it? Sort of catch people off guard, and that is going to be those sorts of quizzes, is it?
Yeah, well, on the computer there, I've got quiz number 323 coming up this week, and out of all the quizzes, that's still been my favourite question I've ever asked. I just love that.
I wanted to ask you about another thing that I found, that you wrote some theme tunes for some TV programs. Is that true? Which program did you write the theme tunes for?
Theme tunes, right? Well, the best known one was this kids art program called Smart, which I'm just trying to think how old you are. It would have been coming out really before you were born, I'm afraid, Louis. But really clever arts program, and I did the theme tune for that. The guy that was produced has been a mate for many, many years since we worked on Saturday morning telly. And Smart also used to have a gallery music in the middle that used to play along. And so I did all that. It's I did quite a lot of stuff for schools telly, things that you wouldn't have seen. We're talking like late 80s, early 90s back then. I'm trying to think of something. A program called Brum about a little car going on Birmingham?
I do know a car called
the early series of Brum. I wrote the theme tune for Brum. It's actually another bloke did the recording, but I actually wrote the theme tune. And about once a year, I get a check for about 20 quid because Brum is still big in Japan, and Japan is still watching Brum.
Really?
And so I get a sort of royalty check of about 20 quid about once a year. Yeah.
I remember being fascinated by Brum because it was on when I was a child, but it was slightly back then it was slightly different to all of the rest of the programs that were on, I suppose, because it was made quite a few years before the rest of them. And I remember being fascinated by it in a sort of morbid sense that I found it quite creepy in a way.
Well, the little guy with the eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I know some people were a bit disturbed by that. Yeah.
But it's I mean, it's a very famous show. I mean, I was quite shocked to see that you'd had some involvement in that. That's amazing.
Oh, it was a brilliant show. It's one of the ones made by Anne Wood, the Teletubbies, Rosie and Jim Ragdoll Productions lady. Absolute genius, and she just knew how to engage small people with TV. It was such fun to work with. But yeah, Brum itself, this model car, would be about sort of, can you see my hands? About that sort of size.
Really?
And it weighed a ton, it had cracking batteries and stuff. But the amount of electronics on it just to make it do all its animated and stuff. And then the kid that used to drive it is only about 12 or something. He's one of these kids that's obviously worked remote controls all his life.
There was
He's a bit
somebody
older than
controlling
12.
it like that.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's just a lad there with the same. If you had a radio controlled drone or a plane or something, similar control, but that's how Bromers works. Yeah, but it's amazing. The guy could just turn it on a sixpence, and they're so clever. In fact, there was two of them. He used to do the driving, then just the puppeteer used to then work the eyes and the wipers and all the bits and pieces.
That's amazing. It would all be CGI now, wouldn't it?
Well, the first series was made for real and always made everything for real. Teletubbies was made with real grass, real people in real skin suits, real stuff, and didn't like CGI. But when, for various reasons, she sold the rights, CGI was the only way forward. The thing is, CGI had improved immensely compared to when Anne was first making programs. I think some of the later, newer Brums, which had a different tune, I think they used a bit of CGI. But no, originally, it was your actual proper mechanical three-dimensional stuff moving around the streets of Birmingham. Brilliant.
It's amazing how quickly technology has evolved when you think about, it wasn't that long ago that we were first actually using any form of kind of, computer and that sort of thing. And it actually leads me quite nicely onto my next question. Thank you for that. Is that I wonder if you had any kind of insight on how you think that the rise of the internet and social media and that sort of thing has affected the way in which you sort of go about your career and that sort of thing. I mean, I know a lot of writers these days will release their books online before they're available, in person. I know that AI is potentially quite a worrying concept for writers. What's your thoughts on kind of since you started to now how that's changed in your industry?
Gotta say, I'm very glad that I was, I if you like, my writing career when I did. When I wrote my Isaac Newton book, which came out about 2000, people only just started getting the internet and getting Google. And I went to the local library in York and I took out 4 books on Isaac Newton. And on the back of those 4 books, I wrote my own Isaac Newton book, which I have to say, probably the best book I wrote, actually, was my Isaac Newton book. Good book. It's big-headed, but I'm just saying, compared to the others, good book. These days, on the internet, I could have found everything within milliseconds compared to the time it took me to go through those books. The only trouble is you've got to filter out an awful lot of rubbish. It's what we said about Wiki earlier. There's such a lot of stuff on Wiki. It's good to find facts on Wiki, and I find it indispensable for a lot of things. Anything, I mean, even for the pub quiz, I will not take a fact off Wiki without double checking. And so I think the problem is there's too much out there, and too much that's unfiltered, unedited, unproduced. And so you don't really know what you're reading. In terms of actual books coming out, it's interesting you say that because I've got a novel I've written and I really like it. And it's just come back from the 3rd publisher and I'm running out of people to send it to now. And they said, look, we think it's great, but we've just done something that's very similar to it. We can't take it. And I thought, I can't be bothered to actually chase publishers anymore now. Why don't I just do the thing and put it on Amazon and just see if it works? If nobody reads it, nobody reads it. I mean, I enjoyed writing it. And so I've been very, very fortunate in that I'm not looking to make a living out of these things now. I'm looking to just enjoy what I do. So for young people getting into it, it's particularly with music as well. Back in the days of music, you had to have a band, recording studio, everything just to get something in good enough quality. But now anybody on a 200 quid laptop can do broadcast quality music. So it's bad news because it means me with all my gear, I've got no advantage over you. But the really good news is you need to have the talent. Hopefully the best will break through. There's an opportunity for anybody. And I have to say, I think that's probably better.
Yeah, I think overall, I think the opportunity to do things in any industry nowadays is probably, the opportunity is probably better than it's ever been. This
Mm.
what we're doing right now is essentially a radio show. And to do a radio show back in the day, you'd obviously need to be part of a radio show team. But I can do it with the help of yourself as our guest, but also just a
But the
microphone and a
fact I
camera.
can just sit here talking to my little
Yeah,
silly laptop and this is coming to you on a quality that's worth broadcasting. I mean, long ago you couldn't do that. You
yeah,
had to record it using a DAT recorder or even a giant reel-to. If you'd done this thing 2 years ago, you'd have seen two giant reel-to-reel tape recorders up there, which I'd never dare turn on because they were just so dangerous.
yeah.
And they weighed a ton as
It's
well.
it's amazing, isn't it? It really is quite amazing, and even AI now as well. Does that worry you?
No, because I'm not competing with it.
Fair enough.
Uh, I think if I was going to be writing a lot of books, I would maybe worry. I don't know. I mean, I think it's clever. I also think it's potentially soul sapping. You just start thinking, is it going to do everything for us? I just
Mm.
find that a wee bit depressing. I mean, the book I've got coming out in America next year, Maths Mazes. It's it's my holy grail for writing maths books for kids is to have a book where the times tables is fun because I think the times tables is so important. So learn the times tables, but without realizing that you're learning them. You go along a little path, then the path will have a little sign saying 8 times 4. Then it'll go along and there'll be holes in the page. And 8 times 4, there'll be three answers 28, 32, or 42. And if you drop down the right hole, you continue. That is the big premise of the book. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than that
Mm.
once you get into it. It's the premise of the book. I had the idea about 10 years ago. It's taken this long to actually get. It's an expensive book to produce. This is why I'm not scared about telling you about this on here because no one's going to run off and make this tomorrow because it's an expensive book to do properly. And finally, we've got the Americans doing it next year. That's going AI. AI would never have come up with that in 1,000 years.
Yeah, there's a certain level of ambition that and sort of
Yeah.
craziness, I suppose, that AI can't come up with.
I mean, they might have come up with something similar, but to actually make it accessible
Mm.
and also to meet the marketplace and everything, it's been quite a game for me. And I've been doing this for a long time. AI might be able to write a novel. You might be able to give it, say, show AI the Harry Potter series. AI, can you buzz off and write book 8 now, book 9, book 10? It can probably go off and do it. But I think the public though would want some sort of certificate of authenticity.
Mm.
I think people, I mean, particularly with someone that's been very much loved the series of books, whoever's written it, Michael Moore, Persia, whoever, people want to think, I want to hear what that guy's got to say, not what computer's got to say. I think it'll get to the point where people need a bit of authenticity. Julia Donaldson, classic example. So
That'd be interesting, won't it? 10 years time, a certificate of authenticity, put in every book and sort of a stamp of authority.
it's that thing where somebody sold the first tweet for about $100,000 because they had the right to come in what it's called. There's sort of like a stamp, isn't there? And you can own, or you can make a picture that
Is
you
this
or I could just copy.
NFTs?
NFT,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. People reckon they can just own something like the first. Why you'd want it or want to pay for it? I don't know. I mean, wow, I'm very glad I'm not that
People
person.
people are obsessed with ownership, aren't they? They want to own
Mm,
things. They want to feel like they have access to something that nobody else does.
mm.
Which is fascinating, really. We're in a whole new kind of era of human psychology of things that never would have been a problem 20 years ago, even 10 years ago.
I
It's
do think though, the more electronics there is around us, the more people are enjoying basic stuff. I mean, right, when I first started doing music, I had a guitar and I had a Wurlitzer piano, which effectively is a mechanical machine. And that's what I had to do my tunes. I did my best stuff on those as well because I wasn't distracted by the little lights and wires. And then you buy an electric keyboard and a MIDI, and then you get a telly with a workstation. And all of a sudden, rather than write two good tunes in a day, I would spend all day just choosing a cymbal sound. And you think, hang on, there's just too much information here. That's why, even though I've got all this stuff every day, it's not working. Every day I try and have a little clink on the piano just to remind myself it is fun just creating like art. A lot of people will do it with an iPad and that, but the people that really enjoy it sit there, they've got their hands dirty, they're making pottery or they're throwing paint and stuff like that. Electronics, AI will never replace it.
Yeah, you're quite right. Art and fashion and that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
It's all about self-expression, and that's a very sneaky sort of segue onto what you're wearing today, because I only ever see you wearing
Well, everybody
this.
asks, yes.
Yeah, I only ever see you wearing this. What's this all about?
Well, this gear, it took me several years, probably about 25 years, to perfect my appearance. And once I got there, it never changes.
So
Really.
is that something that you wear in every day in your daily life, or is it just for kind of, interviews and appearances and that sort of thing?
Every morning when I get out of bed, I spend exactly no time doing my hair, and I spend exactly no time wondering what I'm going to wear. Can't be bothered.
Fair enough.
I mean, the tartan scarfing, I've had a tartan scarf around my neck for, well, cool. I've been with my wife for nearly 40 years, and it was a long time before Bridget. God blimey, I must have been wearing a tartan scarf for, I don't know, 45 years. Just always have. When it gets really, really, really hot, sometimes I do that. Don't feel right though. Yeah.
That's a special occasion.
If I'm doing gigs, if I'm doing a gig in a hot library or a hot hall with spotlights, very occasionally the scarf might be loosened, and that's where I don't know why. It's just what I wear.
So it's a bit.
I
Bart
must have
Simpson.
some sort of condition or something. I don't know. I don't get black leather waistcoat. You see, and that's the office. It's got me. It's got all me. Has to have 4 pens. He's got to have 4 pens. If there's only 3, I have to look to find a 4th one, and it's got USB sticks for doing gigs. I can walk into any school now and do a gig. I've got the USB sticks. I've got the points.
It's like Batman's utility belt, isn't it?
Just like that's exactly it. Utility belt. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
it's funny. I had a whole question sort of planned about the importance of branding, and is this a deliberate decision to do with your personal branding and social media and that sort of thing? And it's not that at all, is it?
No, but wait, social media, but I don't really have social media branding. It's I know a lot of people do. About 20 years ago, the shopping Whitby was selling really good shirts. They were black and red stripes, like kind of Freddy Krueger striped shirts. I bought 4 of them. And if you're daft enough and got nothing better to do, if you put my name into Google Images, just about every single picture, I'm wearing a red and black stripy shirt, because that was just like my gig shirt. I mean, otherwise, I've got blue and black, I've got yellow and black. But if I'm doing a gig and it's been a complicated week, the night before, I'll put a red and black shirt, by the bed, get up, shirt. Oh, I must be doing a gig today. Kind of how it works,
Well, it probably helps as well. If somebody forgets your name, you're the guy in the red and black shirt with the scarf.
Oh yeah, the idiot with the tartan scarf, and it's sun blazing through the window. Yeah, it's either whatever.
Speaking about events as well, I read that you've done over 2,500 live events in around 20 years. That is quite remarkable. How on earth?
It'd be something like that. Yeah. If you had all these kind of schools and festivals, I mean, that would include, say, a multiple event. I mean, not so much these days, but back in the early days, I'd probably do 4 gigs in a school, or possibly 4 schools in a day. So that'd be 4 events, yeah. But then prior to that, studio warm-ups, I think I probably did about well over 1,000 of those. Pub piano gigs, I reckon about 2,000 pub piano gigs. And quizzes, I can be quite specific. It's 323 on Thursday night.
Well, it's interesting you say about the TV warm up, because I used to work in television, and I was involved in making factual entertainment programs. But I always found it fascinating when the warm up comedian or whatever it may be would come in, because I sort of felt a bit sorry for them, because they had the tough job of kind of warming up the audience and getting them laughing without any of the kind of victory of closing out the show and being the star. They just sort of disappear. Was that
some of the shows I warmed up for? I was the star, trust me, mate. Sorry, that sounds rather conceited, but I did all sorts of things. It's particularly back in the day in children's telly. Almost every game show, everything had a live studio audience, and some of the recording breaks went on forever. I mean, I used to, as soon as anybody gets gunged, then all of a sudden, right back to your seats for the next round. But you don't realise there's a good 45-minute recording break, and you sort of fill in. The trouble was, when they sort of said you're on, you don't know if you're on for 10 seconds or if you're going to be on for an hour. That was like kind of the tough bit. But no, a lot of the shows I did, well, I'm going to go back to Roy Castle now. That was my favourite to warm up for, because he was just so good, and the acts were so good. A very well produced programme as well. Roy Castle. Oh, right. This is my best name drop, and this is awful. You must know Cheryl Baker. Cheryl Baker, she was in Bucks Fizz.
Yes.
For goodness sake, nod, young man, nod. Even if you don't know, saying that she's great.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely woman, Cheryl Baker. She was in Bucks Fizz.
And then she used to be on Record Breakers with Roy Castle. And the first time I turned up for Record Breakers to do the warm-up, Cheryl Baker came up with, I know you. You do those science programs. They're brilliant. And I thought, this is Cheryl Baker. Yeah, now listen, that dining table, who am I going to invite to the dining table?
Oh.
I don't know who's going, but we're having Cheryl Baker on the dining table.
Okay. Well,
yeah, she's going to come and join the dinner party. Yeah.
I'll pencil her in and we'll find somebody to get rid of later. What was your role on Swap Shop? Was that a warm-up, or were you involved in that?
Oh, well, that was funny. This is the days when I was desperate to be on telly, and a friend found an advert in the stage newspaper saying, can you play musical instruments? Can you talk? Are you funny? Can you handle animals? Can you deal with whatever? You do live telly? I thought it was Tiswas, and Tiswas was the very anarchic, slapstick ITV rival. And I wrote in a letter to this box number in the stage saying how good I thought Tiswas was and how brilliant I'd be on it. It turned out it was actually Swap Shop, the sort of rather posh BBC competition to Tiswas, as was. And I think they were so surprised I had the nerve to write them a letter saying how much I liked Tiswas that they invited me for an interview. But yeah, they said, can you do this, that, and the other? And at the time, I'd also been doing things like the Comedy Store in London, which was late night on a dodgy club in Soho. And it's where people like Ben Elton and Rick Mail and Alexi Sale all cut their teeth. And I used to try and do that. I just couldn't get on the wavelength of the audience at all there. But it's very political, very sweary, quite rude most of the time. And doing that, and then also doing Saturday mornings, it was a bit hard. I couldn't always separate the two. And what happened was I ended up dealing with the crowd. There's to be huge crowds coming along. And sometimes they could be quite negative and aggressive. And the thing is, I could be more negative and aggressive than they could be. Therefore, I kind of had the job of taming the crowd, making them jump in the right direction. But because of my attitude, I was very, very rarely put on telly. They were terrified of putting me on the box in case I said the wrong thing, which at the time hurt, but looking back, it was extremely wise. So, yeah, I'm proud of them.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, made a lot of nice friends doing that as well. But yeah, you get to a car park at 7:30 on a cold Saturday morning in February, and already there'd probably be about 1,000 people there milling around thinking they're going to sort of see bands and lights and stuff. But most of what they saw was, if they were very lucky, they get a glimpse of the back of Keith Chegwin's head as he interviewed somebody who had a baby hamster that had been born blue or something like that. And then all of a sudden cut back to the studio. And so they'd arrive at sort of 7:30 in the morning. We had to keep there till 1 o'clock. So that's kind of what's that, 3, 4, 5.5 hours. I don't know, 5.5 hours. What else was there to do? And the answer was, look at me.
So you were the most famous face then, I guess, in that circle.
I'm certainly the loudest face. I don't know how famous, but from that, then the studio warm-ups were much, much easier. They were much more dignified. And yes, it's an interesting point you say about the warm-up person not kind of getting the credit. But when I've done so many, I used to initially resent it because I was desperate to present and get on there. But when I thought, well, first of all, they used to spend so much time playing with their hair and what they're going to wear. And I've never cared about either of those things. I just couldn't have that conversation without just telling them to get lost. And so I wouldn't be a very good presenter. And then also I saw them come and go when I did so many series as a warm-up. And towards the end, I realised, you're still working, mate. These people, I don't know what they're doing. They've disappeared. They've had that little flash in the pan. You're still in the BBC. You've got some good mates there. You're having a good time. You're grateful for it. And once I'd got that attitude, which didn't take that long, I realised you just be happy being the warm-up.
There's some, unless you're the top of the top, it's a very fleeting career, isn't it?
It was. I was desperate to present some of those kids' telly programs. A lot of them were good programs, but I wouldn't have been the right person for it. And looking back on it, it's like the Comedy Store. I was desperate to be a sort of like big star on the Comedy Store, on that comedy circuit, but I wouldn't go back and change things now. I really wouldn't. I might have been in films and a bit more telly and stuff like that. But I've been so fortunate in hitting the niche, particularly with the Murderous Maths books. It's something that would never would have happened. And the fact I've become an author is amazing. And my mum was never going to be proud of me jumping around being an idiot on the telly. But as soon as I was an author, my son's an author, So that was cool.
Did you ever think you would end up as an author when you were growing up or in university?
No, if you said to me 30 years ago, my main part of my career would be from writing a series of maths books, as I said, you were daft. You'd be going into schools and talking to sort of like 700 kids at a time and getting jokes with numbers and maths and stuff, But I'd have thought you were mad. And that's what I've done.
Well, here you are. Everything works out, doesn't it? Here you are.
Seems to have done, yeah.
I also heard a story that Noel Edmonds, who obviously was involved in Swap Shop as well, I read a story that he's got a black cab as his main car so that he can drive in bus lanes.
I heard that about Stephen Fry. I don't know if that's true.
Maybe this is a common myth that flies around.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think I only met Noel Edmonds twice, way back in the must be the early 80s, I think, when he was hosting Swap Shop, and I never saw him since. We didn't have a great deal in common.
Just to bring it back to some of the live events as well.
You're doing well to keep a thread going through this. I got to say, Louis, you're good at what you do. I
try. It's probably the hardest part, but
because I know I ramble off, and sometimes I worry a bit. But no, you're making notes, aren't you?
Oh, I try. But this is the beauty of it, though. Which brings actually me very nicely onto my next question is, do you have any tips for people for public speaking and that sort of thing? Because with that amount of live events, I mean, you've got to have picked up a few skills and I've
got to say, speak with the clarity and the interest that you've got, and you've nailed it. It's there you are. I mean, it's a joy to talk to you. I'd have gone by now if I wasn't enjoying it. But
thank you. That's very kind.
No, I mean, the thing is, public speaking, number one is don't try to be funny. I know it sounds silly. I mean, if you're going to be funny, if you're a naturally funny person, it will come out. But I think the worst thing a public speaker can do, well, apart from going on too long, is scripting in a joke and then waiting for the laugh. And everybody eventually goes, I mean, I know it sounds an awful thing to say. I mean, the funniest things is, if you really want to laugh, drop a glass of water on your foot or something like that, particularly for kids. That'll get a laugh. Make it look like an accident. But I know it sounds stupid, but stick to the point, I think, is a trick of public speaking. Don't try and think. And incidentally, because it might be clever to you, it's not to them. It's the same as writing a book. When I say a 5-page story isn't as good as a 3-page story, it's the same as public speaking. Stick to what you set out to say. That's kind of what I'd say is the trick.
I think that's great advice. I mean, I think a lot of people will be interested in hearing that advice because I don't know if you know, but it's actually the number one fear in the world, public speaking. More people have listed when they were asked what their fear is as public speaking than death. So that means that more people would rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy.
Get away. I think my wife's number one fear is hearing me public speaking because she's heard so much of it now. No, back in the day when I used to do loads and loads of pub gigs, she was loyally there every night. And she doesn't come down the quizzes hardly ever now. And people say, why doesn't she come down? I say, trust me, that woman never has to hear me down the microphone again. She's done her time. She really has. Wonderful support to me as my wife. So
it's amazing, isn't it, when you get somebody who supports you? I mean, my granddad, he'll turn up to anything I do, whatever it is. He's remarkable.
Yeah.
And he'll sit and watch all of these episodes that we film and do what he can to.
What's his name?
His name is Mike. Shout out.
Hello, Mike. Hello, Mike. If you're watching this, thank you for watching.
He'll love that. He will. I have a bit of a silly question for you now, which I'm very.
Oh, silly one.
Yeah,
make a change.
Yeah, that'll make a change from the deep conversations about AI and social media. I read that you've got over 1,500 copies of the Beano. Why not the Dandy?
No, I don't know why. It's when I was a little lad, my grandma always used to sort of buy us comics to read when we went round, and just there isn't much difference between the Beano and the Dandy, and I got to know the editors of both very well. Going back again now in the 80s, a bloke called Ewan used to be the editor for the Beano, and his great mate in the next office was the editor for the Dandy. This is up in Dundee, Morris. And Morris said, "Oh, the Beano, it's a bit straight, a bit boring. Where's the anarchists in the Dandy?" There was this sort of slight rivalry. And when you read a lot of these things, there is a slightly different tone between the two, which very much comes from the editors themselves, actually. And you couldn't have both. Now plump for the Beano, and you get to know the Bash Street kids. And I mean, how many characters can you name from the Dandy? I can think of two. I can think of Desperate Dan and Corky the Cat. From the Beano, and I know I've read an awful lot of it, but I can tell you, ask somebody on the street and they can tell you the Bash Street kids, Dennis the Menace, Billy Whiz, Roger the Dodger, Minnie the Minx. These are all Beano. It's just for some reason it's a stronger brand.
No, fair enough. I was just intrigued. And not Marvel or DC or any of the superheroes?
Oh, I used to like reading those as well when
Okay.
my grandma got me them. But must have been around the time I was at uni or shortly after I bought a couple of copies of the Beano and then bought another one. And I'm a terrible collector. Nothing gets thrown away. I mean, all these ones. I mean, I've got about 7 guitars in the cupboard there, one of which I've owned since I was at school. It's a dreadful thing, but I couldn't possibly part with it. And same with the Beanos. Suddenly realised, hey, I've got 10 Beanos all in consecutive order, and one more Beano will mean there's 11 in consecutive order, and all of a sudden it gets a bit creepy. And then what would happen is I'd be buying it every week, and I wouldn't have a subscription. The challenge was to buy it, and occasionally you go to the shop and the Beanos had sold out. When I was living in London, I used to go tromping all over London occasionally trying to find that one missing Beano. I don't know, with my scarf on. I don't know what the word obsessive means. Don't even start me.
The scarf is quite fitting with the Beano, isn't it? It's got the same colours and the same sort of
It's a bit, yeah. It is a bit. It is a bit, yeah.
Do you think that you have to? Is it important to consume sort of children's media to write a good children's book? To understand what they want, the Beano, that sort of thing, and you mentioned your friend's books, Philip Reeve.
I think it would be a big mistake to sit there in your ivory tower thinking, I shall now write my children's book. I mean, one thing that every children's author gets absolutely sick to the back teeth of is you're looking at breakfast telly and suddenly Claire Balding has written a children's book, or I don't know, so and so footballer has written a children's book, and they think, great, the world is waiting for another celebrity to write a book. The people that write them for a living, in and out publishers, and desperate just for that one little mention on national telly, just to sort of like help bump up their income, and that people who are really good at what they do don't get it. And all of a sudden, some sort of celebrity grandly thinks, oh, I've got kids, I'll write them a book. And then because it's got so-and-so's name on the front, everybody goes, this must be good, I'll go and buy that. It really, really winds people up. Occasionally, a celebrity will write a children's book and it's a cracker. I'm not saying the best one is, and I can't remember his name. Is it Tom from McFly? I think it's McFly or Busted. I'm really, really sorry.
Tom Fletcher.
Could be.
Mm.
It could be. And it's just that I had an idea for a new book about a year ago, and somebody said, that's great. Here's a couple of things to sort of think of to and one of the ones that sent me was that, and it was such a clever little book. And I thought, now you are good. I don't care how big your band is or whatever it is, as a children's author, you are good. But a lot of them, you just think, no thanks.
I actually worked with Tom Fletcher when I was working in TV, and he's a lovely man as well. So
have I got the right name? Is that the bloke?
I think so. Yeah, with the glasses and sort of a quip.
I think so. I think the book I was saying is called "There Is a Witch in This Book" or "There Is a Bear in This Book." But it's a very simple, very clever idea, and really, really just well thought through and put together. And there you go. There's the exception. He's allowed to write books.
Everyone else is banned.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't say that. It's a level playing field. If people say, do you get cross about whether it's J.K. Rowling or David Williams is another one. You go into a sort of bookshop and children's shelves, and it's just the same 3 or 4 names everywhere. And a lot of children's authors get really, really upset saying, no, we just have a bit more variety. The trouble is, the big names bring in the people to the bookshop who would probably have never come in. And then you hope that as well as buying a David Williams book, they'll go, oh, that looks interesting, I'll take that one as well. And so it keeps the book trade alive. Without the big names, there probably wouldn't be that book trade. So kind of children's authors who kind of ain't happy about the big names muscling in, sometimes you have to let it happen a bit just to keep the trade active.
That's an interesting insight. I guess you need a bit of both, like you say, to keep the trade active. I'm glad you mentioned.
Yeah, I just know people who've struggled for a long time writing kids stuff, getting nowhere with it, and they have written really good stuff. The publishers like what they've done, everything, but you just get any little bit of publicity, just a mention in a newspaper would be great. And then somebody, I'm not going to give a name, but they suddenly get a big spread about their new book. Oh, we're so lucky they've contributed towards children's literature. Oh,
I'm really glad you mentioned J.K. Rowling there, because I'm going to do another one of my cheeky segues. In the first Harry Potter book, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask people. In the first Harry Potter book, the turning point, I suppose you could call it, is when Hagrid sort of kicks the door down, tells Harry he's a wizard, and that's when everything kind of gets kickstarted. To me, that's the turning point of the book. And I think that every good book, every good film, every good TV show kind of has that turning point that changes somebody's life. So I want to know what the turning point in your life was. When did your life change? When did it become what it is today?
Well, two things happened at once, actually. Two things happened at once. One is trivial and one is extremely important. It was around my 30th birthday. Me, who had always wanted to be on telly, rather than just appearing as a little bit of an idiot on Swap Shop, I was offered the screen test to do science programs for the BBC, and I went in and did it, and I got the job, and I presented. There was some kind of school science programs, but it was something I could do, something my mother was proud of because she wanted me to be a teacher. So me being on telly was good for me. Me talking about science, how it works, was good for her. So that was kind of good. And so getting that job was great. And at the same time, I met my current wife, who's still my current wife. I met the girl I went out with, and I had the intelligence to ask her to marry me. And so there we go.
There we go. Then.
So it was just all in the space of probably about a sort of 6-week period. And then I did the science programs. I'm still playing pianos in pubs. And then, like, the next thing that happened was when the books unexpectedly took off. I'd done a couple of books, done right, been a bit of fun, like a little bit of money came in. But then when the first Murderous Maths book took off, and then suddenly there was seriously saying, like, can we write more of these? Write more of these. And then you write a book, pardon me, you get an advance, and you sort of think, right, well, that was nice, that was it. And I didn't actually know about royalties. And all of a sudden, when the thing goes to 30 languages, suddenly in September or October or whenever it is, a check comes through for a couple of £100 because you've sold books in Brazil. You think, what? I didn't do anything extra. I did all the typing ages ago, and suddenly there's what? That was in terms of career, that was a massive moment. Was that, of course, we can do something with this.
I find it quite motivational to hear that such a short period of time in your life, 6 weeks, has affected the next 40 years. I mean, it's quite motivational to kind of live every day as though it's going to be that day that changes your life.
No, it's everything. Honestly, kind of hangs on one or two phone calls. I had an engineering degree, came out of university, and I was doing a comedy show at the piano with the puppet that we talked about. We were doing that kind of thing. And I was at the Edinburgh Fringe. I've been there for a fortnight, and I've had a few people, but nothing was going to come of it. Then on the last night, I had an audience of about 4 people. And, you go out, you do the show, thanks for coming, the whole thing. And one of them was a bloke called Clive Wolfe, who ran something called the National Student Drama Festival. And he invited me down to perform at this National Student Drama Festival down in Southampton. And that's about 6 months later than that. And so I spent 6 months working in a factory for that one gig. When I did that one gig, and off the back of that, one person saw that, who was at the National Theatre, put my name to this, and suddenly through this really, really tenuous thread, suddenly I was getting quite a few comedy gigs, and I started to meet this sort of TV people and this sort of thing. But it's like the most tiny little piece of cotton, and if it snaps, you've lost it. So that's kind of how it is.
It's so interesting you said that, because I've noticed this in a few of your interviews and things like that. It's the kind of butterfly effect, isn't it? One small thing happens and it leads further and further and further. You tend to talk about it in a sort of maths context. Small things happen in the field of maths where somebody discovers. I think I heard you talking about right angles on a semicircle. Somebody discovered that, and it led to the next discovery and the next discovery. It sounds like that's something that quite fascinates you, to be honest. Those sorts of butterfly effects.
It's got to be interesting. It's like a lottery winner. All of a sudden you're sitting there, whatever your life is, and then suddenly you've got more money than you know what to do with, which is always a good thing, let's face it. But what was it? It was 6 numbers on a piece of paper. It was just 1 in 40 million chance. It's all these things are just so thin, aren't they?
Well, is it a 50-50 chance? You either win it or you don't.
Oh, that's good. Oh, you should be writing the maths books. I love that.
No. I was.
And a very nice little card trick, which I can't do on the screen, but a nice little card trick. And it looks like a 50-50 chance, and it isn't. For every £1 I pay you, you're going to pay me £2 with it. It's a very good little card trick like that.
That's how the people make money on London Bridge.
yeah. I've seen. We used to live down in Paddington, and just round the corner by
Lancaster Gate Tube Station, there was always the soapbox there and the guy with the 3-card trick doing that. And there'd be blokes with crumpled 20s battening it down and betting on the wrong card and this sort of stuff. When you get somebody coming out of that tube station, usually staying in the big posh hotel there, having a look in. So they get their 20 quid out. Yeah, I'll have a slice of that. And of course, immediately the cards have, he's done the trick. And then he's lost his money and the guy can't work out where the money's gone. No. And of course, he didn't realise that whole lot were one team working just to get that one sucker in. Because what would happen, there's always a guy in the corner, and as soon as the old bill came around the corner or a copper, like smoke that disappeared. It's extraordinary. But it was a whole team making it look like, oh, we're going to bet on that one, definitely that one, And you're looking at it, that has to be wrong. No, you bet on that one. And the whole thing was a setup. It wasn't one man doing the cards, but it took 3 other guys to make the trick work. It was brilliant.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's all
how
maths.
I got onto that, but anyway, yeah. Oh, you were talking about the cards on London Bridge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember
all
watching
maths,
those guys and thinking, this is really clever. This is really nice setup. This.
I'm fascinated by a man who you list as your favorite mathematician, Ludolf. But I heard, and you'll have to correct me if I get the details of this wrong, this was a man who spent his life's work trying to work out pi to 35 digits.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Was that his name, Ludolf? It's funny. I know exactly who you mean. Yeah, he spent his entire life working on pi.
I sort of thought of, he had this whole journey where he spent his whole life trying to work out pi to 35 spaces because he thought that was all that would ever be needed. And then at the end of his life, somebody else came along and worked it out infinitely. And it sort of got me thinking about kind of your life's work. And I wonder if to link that into that story, how would you like your life's work to be remembered? And I suppose, what is your life's work?
The life's work, staring out the window, trying to think of something funny. That's a weird job, isn't it, really? It's all been such an accident, but I'm extremely proud that there's kids around the world who like the maths books that otherwise I've had so many nice emails from parents of kids with various syndromes and spectrums and stuff like that. And the books have obviously brought them out of a shell. I mean, even to this day, I get emails from people. Oh, about 2 months ago, a lady, and I'm guessing from the name she's probably Indian, but she's a professor at Harvard in New York. And she just found my name, Googled me, and said, hi, I just want to explain who I am. I'm so-and-so. I was brought up in, I can't remember the name of the place, but then I went to Cambridge University, UK, and I came to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and now I'm a thing. And it all started off when I read one of your Murderous Maths books. And it's amazing. I get a few of these from these really, really high-powered people who say, I started them off. If I intended that to happen, I mean, if I'd sat down there and planned this, I could probably be prouder of it. But the fact is, it just happened anyway. I mean, it's, I don't know. I don't really think about my life's work being something. I just hope I've been a reasonable father to the kids. That's really that's far more important. Yeah. As long as the kids don't hate me, everything else doesn't matter.
It seems to be a bit of a theme in a lot of your answers that things kind of happen and you make the best of them and roll with them and kind of turn them into.
Always had to do. Yeah. I mean, a weird thing about 5 years ago, I got a letter from the government saying, I'm going to be getting a pension soon. I thought, that's weird. I thought you had to have a job first. I mean, there's days when I worked hard and I've certainly done some long hours on the train, traveling up and down, doing gigs. But I have done jobs as well. I've done security guarding. I've been into offices and all that stuff back in the day. I know what it's like to be turning up at 7:30 every morning for work and with a boss. And so since those days, and they were a long time ago, I've never really feel I've had what I'd call, I've never had a boss. I've never had anybody tell me what I've got to wear. No.
Well, you're your own boss these days, aren't you? You get to pick your
pretty
uniform.
much, yeah. I said the office Christmas party is really tedious. It's just me.
You don't want to end up with the weird guy.
Sat in the corner with the same bloke every year. Yeah.
What if I had to press you for one singular answer on this one?
Sorry, you made me laugh now. Right, give us a minute.
I'm glad.
Right, end up with the weird guy. Okay, hang on, Louis, got you, mate. Yeah, you're going to press me for something. Go on.
I'm going to press you for one answer on this, because it's very easy to fob this off and give a politician's answer. But what one piece of work would you say you're most proud of over your life?
Yeah, tricky. I mean, I keep talking about the Murderous Maths books. They've sort of been the salesman make a difference. The best book is, I think, the Isaac Newton book.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's I was originally asked if I could write a book. It's for a series called Dead Famous, and I was asked if I could write a book about Einstein, and I said, look, I don't understand it, and there's no way I can explain it to anybody else. But really nice guy, Dr. Robert surname, I can't remember, but he wrote it. A very clever book, but I couldn't have written that. But the Isaac Newton book, first of all, Philip Reeve did the pictures, and the pictures are great. It's quite funny. It's quite a complicated story, very interesting and rather strange man. Also in it, I explained calculus. And I thought, I bet anybody be slightly picking up a bit of a read didn't expect to put it down and think, oh, I've just learnt calculus. And I think if there was just one book, people can sort of say he wrote that one. I think I'd probably go for the Isaac Newton book.
It's interesting that you say that you're probably most known for the Murderous Maths, but then you pick something different. That seems to be a bit of a theme with art. I mean, I know Oasis often say that their favorite song is not Wonderwall. Seems fitting at the moment with a Oasis reunion, but that Wonderwall is their song, isn't it? But they rarely say that that's their favorite, and it seems to be an interesting sort of pattern.
It's strange. Prior to the Runaway Pea, if it's going to measure everything purely in book sales, what the Murderous Maths series, the Sudoku book, I was asked if I'd write the Murderous Maths Sudokus, and it's just full of Sudoku, those little puzzles. I didn't even have to make the puzzles up. I just had to write a guide and instructions using the Murderous Maths characters. And I know it took me about 2 days. It wasn't much to do, just fit it in so we could use it as part of the series. And that book, it did okay in this country. In America, it did 500,000 in 6 months. I mean, in terms of absolutely bang out of the trap sales, the Sudoku book was mad. And for a period of 2 or 3 years, I just got silly royalties on that Sudoku book. But, for me, it was an afternoon. It was like the jam on the cake. You've been working away for ages, and all of a sudden you get a winner. But, I mean, there's no way that's my best book. Because it sold so many. I mean, I'm glad a lot of people liked it. Obviously, very grateful for it. But and also, in fact, the book I like best, or one of the books I like best, I can't get published. It's a novel. It's a book I wrote ages ago. It's a novel. I think it's quite clever. It's got magic in it. It's got a few twists, and just can't shift it. And the thing is, it's not a matter of being a good novel or a bad novel. You have to have the right theme, the right marketplace. It has to be, might not sell this year. In 5 years' time, I might find someone who'll take it. Everything is a changing landscape as to how to pitch and where these things go. But it's a novel which I've read it through. I've looked at it. I've tightened it up now and then, but I thought it's not going to get better as this book. That's a good book.
Right place, wrong time, I suppose. I mean, the famous story is the countless amount of publishers that J.K. Rowling took Harry Potter to, isn't it? I can't remember the exact number, but it was absolutely.
I know.
So tell me about this novel then. What's it about? This is hot gossip, isn't it?
Just came back. I read about 10 years ago, and I'm reading it. It's called The Magician's Grave. Magician's Grave. It's set about 120 years ago, and it's effectively a paper boy in this kind of slightly backward village. And a town, but the town's got a reputation for being enchanted. It's got, witches were burned. It's all stories, all stuff like that. But a bloke comes to the town. He's a theatre performer, and he calls himself, I don't remember what he's called now, Mister or something. And he's on the stage, but he claims to have come back from the dead. Elijah Morn, that's his name. He claims to have come back from the dead, and he's a magician. But he says, right, first of all, a few normal conjuring tricks, but now a trick that I first learned 120 years ago, and it involves death and then bringing things back to life. And on stage, he has an assistant, and he does this trick and basically makes her disappear, but then he can't make her reappear. And for real, this woman has disappeared. And this guy is pretending that his magic is so powerful it actually works. And the newspaper people are proving he's a fraud. And that's basically the whole thing of the book. And they find the graveyard that he reckons he's come out from. They find Elijah Morn's grave, and they dig up this grave, and they say, when we find the bones down there, we can prove you're a fake. And when they dig down, there ain't no bones in that grave. And so it's really creepy. There's genuine magic in it. Some good laughs. That's a good book.
It sounds a little bit darker than a lot of your previous work, is it?
Oh, dark, of course, yeah. It's got an acid bath in the basement of the theatre where they think he's got rid of the body. Yeah.
Is it aimed at a slightly higher age range?
Yeah, I'll be looking at sort of possibly young adults, something like that. It's probably Urgum the Axeman, just slightly older than that. It's not horrific. But hopefully, there's characters you can relate to. That age group, sort of like 10, 12. And I mean, the newspaper boy, he's the one that basically doing all the investigation. And he's got a friend who works in the local tavern who's effectively, she's a reformed pickpocket, but anything to do with locks or anything, she can just dip and stuff like that. And it's I don't know, I think it's a good book.
I think
one that, if I get around to it, I might put it on Amazon. Magician's Grave.
Yeah, why not? Give it a go. I think young people are fascinated by things that are slightly maybe outside of their level of understanding, you know, a little bit darker. And I have one more quick question before we move on to that segment that I love, and I'll tell you about that in a second. I wanted to ask, are you a religious man? Because I think obviously reading Urgum the Axeman, there's a lot of themes of faith and religion in that. You know, Urgum is the last believer in these two gods, and really the whole story revolves around these gods who interfere in his life. And I just wondered if that was a kind of conscious decision to make a kind of point about faith and your religion, or if it's kind of just a plot point.
Plot point, pretty much. In terms of my own religion, I don't subscribe to any established church thing, but I have a massive respect for those that do. I mean, I've got a lot of strong Catholic friends. One of my mates I was at uni with might be the next Archbishop of Canterbury. There you go, bloke called John Inge, who's currently the Bishop of Wells, I think.
Really?
And and I have a massive respect for people who have a faith of whatever sort and keep it. And obviously, you know, a peaceful faith is the ones that we kind of agree with, and it helps an awful lot of people at difficult times. I don't have a conventional thing. Obviously, I brought up C of E, but apart from the odd wedding or funeral, I don't know when I last went into a church, I'm afraid. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
It makes you a better person, whatever faith. It has to be good, doesn't it, really? It's I think a lot of people find a lot of guidance, a lot of solace as well. It's people are going through difficult times. Whichever church you subscribe to, it gives them a lot of solace and sort of helps you through with things and stuff, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yes. Anyway, got a bit distracted there. We have
a good question. Thank you for asking. That question. Good.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. But like I say, we have one section that we kind of like to end up. It's my personal favorite segment because it really gets people thinking. Because as I explained to you at the start, you know, this is a kind of communication and oracy based podcast. But right at the end, after a long conversational, what we do is we kind of try and take those conversational skills away. And I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and I'm intrigued to know if you can answer them with just one word. So this is the kind of segment for
me. One word. You've been talking to me for 3 hours. You think I can do anything with one word?
So this is why I find it fascinating. So you have one word to answer these next few questions. You can take as long as you need, and we'll see kind of what answers it sparks. So firstly, what motivates you?
Communication.
What scares you?
Loneliness.
What is the best thing about your career?
Independence.
What is the worst thing about your career?
Uncertainty.
What is your biggest strength?
Humor. I'm trying to think. It's sense of humor, but I don't know how you put that into one word. What do you think?
We'll go with humor. I think we know what you mean. And you know what I'm going to ask you. What's your biggest weakness?
Impatience.
You are an actor, presenter, writer, comedian, musician, magician, all of these things that we've kind of discussed today. Director of pantomimes, all these things. Again, in one word, which are you most proud of?
Writer.
And the final question in our one-word answer segment, I'm going to give you 2 words to answer this one because you may need it. Who is your hero?
Patrick Moore. Sir Patrick Moore. There you are. 3 words.
I'll allow it. And so Patrick Moore, that is you can answer with more than one word from now on.
Extraordinary bloke. Just in terms of a TV presenter, they'd say, talk for 1 minute 45 seconds on Beetlejuice, and he could talk off the pack for 1 minute and 45 seconds. And he ran that Sky at Night program, infused so many people, respected around the world. Lovely guy, and the only person I ever asked for an autograph.
Really? And did he oblige?
Of course he did. And he gave me his card. If ever I was down in Chelsea on the south coast to go and visit. Yeah, lovely, lovely man.
Oh, lovely. Do you want to add him to your 5 Dream Dinner guests?
It's going to be a full table, but yeah, I guess he made a bid there. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got 7. You've got Frank Marlborough, Roy Castle, Harry Houdini, Elizabeth I, Isaac Newton, Cheryl Baker, and Sir Patrick Moore.
It's going to be a cracking night.
That is
We'll have Lou as well. Come on, Lou. Yeah.
I will take you up on that invitation. I have 2 final questions for you. These are as many words as you like I say, and we've touched briefly on one of them. But what does the future hold for you? What's next?
That's very tricky. There's 2 things I'm really, really looking forward to. One is how when this book comes out in America next year. It's been a long haul, but I do think it's a clever book, and I'm looking forward to seeing that book come out. Maths Mazes. And then the other thing, again, that's going to be coming out either next year, the year after, is there's going to be a Runaway Pea stage show. There's a theatre company just got the funding to develop a Runaway Pea. I have no idea how they're going to do it. I cannot wait to see that. But in the meantime, I just we're very fortunate here. We have a house by the seaside, and we have lots of noisy things. I do my pub quiz. I've sort of done everything I really want to do. Is like to have had a couple more books published, but there's always going to be more there. But yeah, it's all been good.
It's quite a nice sort of sense of satisfaction, really, isn't it, to sort of feel
It's
that
like
way?
smugness creeping in there. I think you find.
Do you know what part of the world the Runaway Pea show will be available to watch?
Oh, well, the people developing it are up in Glasgow, but
Okay.
it's a small company. But their previous show, which they took and started off playing a few theatres around the UK, that went around the world.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if the original performers took it around the world, but the actual show that they devised, went around the world. So Lordy knows where it's going to go. I mean, if it just does one performance, if people like it, that's fine. I mean, that's showbiz. But obviously, if it does loads more, then that's great. That'd be great.
Wow.
You know?
I look forward to seeing it in London then, in that case.
Absolutely. West End, yeah. Don't buy on Ticketmaster because they're already rising the prices.
Dynamic prices.
Yeah, dynamic pricing, that's the thing, yeah.
So I have one final question for you, and I absolutely love to end the podcast on this question because it leaves our audience with something to think about here. What is one piece of advice that you wish you had been given when you were younger?
Sounds awful. Shut up. No, it's you're not always as funny as you think you are. I think that's probably the answer. You know, just think. No, I'll tell you what. Think before you speak. Think before you speak.
I think that is the most Kjartan Poskitt answer you could have given.
And I've done absolutely nothing of that for the last 3 hours, so I'm sorry.
Perfect. That's exactly. It's called Conversational for a reason. So that just about brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you very much, Kjartan, for joining me today. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you for your time. And audience, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you very much.